I woke up choking and coughing water onto the muddy ground. My vision slowly cleared, and I saw a man crouching in front of me. His clothes were soaking wet, clinging tight to his body, showing off every muscle, and I mean every single one. 8-pack abs, sharp jawline, water dripping down his neck. The whole package. Then he spoke in the coldest voice I'd ever heard. "Jiangmi, I agreed to the divorce. You don't need to keep throwing yourself into rivers." Divorce? What divorce? Before I could figure anything out, a sharp pain hit deep inside my skull. Memories that weren't mine flooded in, crashing through my brain like a storm. So here's the deal, I died. Back in my real life, I was a single woman in my 20s who worked herself to death drawing fashion designs at some company. Literally died at my desk from overwork. And now I woke up inside a novel, in the body of a village woman who shared my name. The original Jiangmi was a knockout, curves, perfect skin, the prettiest woman for miles around. But she was also a complete idiot. She had this incredible husband named Hezheng, tall, broad-shouldered, muscular, hard-working, and handsome enough to put any modern male model to shame. But did she appreciate him? No. She was obsessed with some skinny, useless city boy who came to the countryside as an educated youth. This whole drowning scene? The original Jiangmi staged it herself, threatening to die unless Hezheng agreed to divorce her so she could run off with that pretty boy loser. And I knew exactly how that story ended. According to the book, after the divorce, that scumbag tricked her out of every last penny and sold her to rough men deep in the mountains. She died horribly and didn't even get a proper burial. A cold wind blew across the river, and I shivered hard. My wet clothes felt like ice against my skin. Hold on, I can still fix this. I looked at Hezheng again. Broad shoulders, long legs, packed with lean muscle, handsome and strong. The original owner threw away this man for some worthless pretty boy. Was her brain broken or waterlogged? Forget that skinny loser. This prime specimen of a man? The old Jiangmi didn't want him, but I sure do. Divorce? Not happening. Not even if you kill me. I wiped away the original sour expression and put on my best pitiful look. With a body like this, playing the helpless beauty was easy. Cough, cough. I let out a soft whimper and leaned my whole body against Hezheng. He tried to dodge, but I grabbed his thick, burning hot arm and squeezed out the sweetest voice I could manage. "Hezheng, I'm so cold. My chest hurts so much." His brows knotted tight. "Let go. We're going to the brigade office first thing tomorrow morning. I'm not going anywhere." I looked up at him with watery eyes, the rims turning red. "When did I ever say I wanted a divorce certificate? You literally screamed before jumping into the river that if I didn't divorce you, you'd die right in front of me." His voice got even colder, and he tried to pry my hands off. Instead, I wrapped my arms around his waist and pressed myself against his broad, warm chest. My foot slipped, that's all. I fell in by accident. "Who wants to divorce you? You're my husband. I'm sticking with you for the rest of my life, and you can't make me leave." He went completely stiff. He stared down at me like I'd grown a second head. Just half an hour ago, the old Jiangmi had been screaming in his face, calling him a dirt-poor roughneck with no romance, swearing she'd rather die than stay away from that city boy. Now here I was, all soft and clingy. He clearly thought I was running some new scheme. "Get off. Walk yourself," he said, voice hard as stone. "My legs are jelly. I can't walk," I whined, burying my face deeper into his wet neck. And I think I twisted my ankle. It really hurts. The autumn wind was freezing. My lips were turning blue, and I couldn't stop shaking. He ground his teeth, so hard I could hear it. But he didn't leave me there. Like it or not, until those papers were signed, I was still technically his wife. He couldn't just let me freeze to death on the riverbank. He roughly pulled my hands off his waist, hooked one arm under my knees and the other behind my back, and lifted me up in one smooth motion. The sudden weightlessness made me yelp, and I naturally wrapped both arms around his neck. Being this close, his scent hit me full force, aggressive, masculine, mixed with river water and wild grass. Raw and primal. His arm muscles bulged from carrying me. Every line radiated pure power. I was screaming with joy on the inside. The original Jeongmi's brain was definitely waterlogged. She had this absolute beast of a man in her bed and wanted to trade him for that scrawny loser? That pretty boy didn't have half of what Heejung had. The dirt road was bumpy and uneven, but Heejung walked steady as a rock. With each step, I let myself sink a little deeper against his chest. My hands, which had been resting innocently around his neck, slowly slid down past his sharp collarbones. Through the thin, soaking wet fabric of his shirt, my fingertips landed right on his firm, full chest muscles. I didn't just touch them. I pressed down softly with my palm.
Oh, my God.
I was losing my mind inside. My eyes were practically glowing. The texture, the firmness, absolutely unreal. These were muscles built from actual farm work and hunting, 100 times better than any protein powder gym body. I wasn't exactly being subtle about it. My fingers even started tracing little circles. Heejung was already walking fast, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. When my wandering hand touched him like that, something dangerous flashed in his eyes, and he stopped dead in his tracks. The only sound was crickets chirping and his rough breathing. He looked down at me with dark, intense eyes full of warning, jaw clenched so tight the muscle twitched. Jeongmi, his voice came out completely hoarse, strained with barely held restraint. Where exactly do you think you're putting your hands? Huh? I blinked at him with the most innocent face I could manage. Not only did I not pull my hand back, I pressed down on those rock-hard muscles twice more. Hubby, what are you talking about? I don't understand. I nuzzle my face into the curve of his neck, breathing warm air against his hot skin. I'm so cold. The wind is making me shiver. Hold me tighter, please. I wrap my arms around him like vines, pressing my soft body flush against his chest. A vein throbbed at his temple. Didn't understand? This was the same woman who used to slap at her own clothes for 10 minutes if she accidentally brushed against even the corner of his shirt, screaming that he smelled like a dirt farmer's sweat. Now my hands were practically glued to him and refused to come off. He grabbed my wandering wrist with one big hand. Jeongmi, behave yourself. It took every ounce of his willpower not to toss me straight into the cornfield beside the road. I pouted my red lips and let my eyes go misty and pitiful.
Ow.
Hubby, you're hurting me. That breathy little hubby could melt bones. He stopped breathing for a second. Then he dropped my wrist like it burned him, clenched his jaw, and started walking even faster. I leaned against his broad shoulder, and a tiny smug grin curved my lips where he couldn't see it. Nice try, you stubborn man. Like I can't handle you. We reached the He family's yard at the edge of the village pretty quickly. Heejung walked to the bed platform, loosened his arms, and dumped me onto the Kong without a shred of gentleness. The warm body heat vanished, and I hit the cool, rough bedding with a little shiver. Before I could even sit up properly, the man turned around and headed straight for the door. His back looked like he was running from a she-demon trying to suck out his soul. I lunged forward and snatched the hem of his wet shirt just in time. Where are you going? I tilted my face up, pale and soft and nervous looking.
He stopped dead.
He looked down at my small white hand gripping his shirt, my delicate fingers against his big, calloused ones. Let go. Still cold. Still hard. No, I didn't let go. I held on tighter, half my body sliding off the edge of the Kong until I was practically about to fall face first into his lap. Are you going to the brigade office to get divorce papers behind my back? I told you. I'm not divorcing you. He stared down at me, brows locked tight. Then his gaze swept over my body. My wet clothes had gone nearly see-through, clinging to every curve I had. Especially around the collar, there was a whole lot of pale skin on display. Heejung jerked his eyes away. His atoms apple-bobbed hard. He pried my fingers off his shirt, grabbed the blanket, and threw it right over my head, burying me completely. Change into dry clothes. I poked my head out from the blanket like a little animal. Then where are you going? He paused at the doorway, his rough hand resting on the frame. The kitchen, making ginger soup, and then his tall, broad figure walked away without looking back. He practically fled. I stared at the empty doorway, hugged the blanket, and rolled around on the Kong, laughing quietly to myself. acting all cold and heartless on the outside, but still worried I'd get sick from the cold. This man was the classic type, harsh mouth, soft heart. I climbed out of the blanket and looked around the small room, barefoot on the warm Kong. It was a typical northern countryside mud house. Yellowed old newspaper pasted on the walls, a chipped red wardrobe in the corner. A wooden shelf held a white enamel basin with a red double happiness symbol on it, and a bamboo case thermos stood neatly beside it. The place was shabby but spotless. Someone kept it very clean. Then I looked down at the Kong I was sitting on. The bedding was spread flat and neat, but on this whole big, heated bed, there was only one buckwheat pillow. I patted around to make sure. Just one. Combined with the memories in my head, I wanted to scream. The original Zhangmi was so disgusted by He Zheng's dirt smell that she wouldn't let him sleep on the Kong. This man, 6'3", built like a god, had been banished to the drafty firewood shed to sleep on a pile of dry corn stalks for over half a year. I smacked my own forehead. The original owner's brain must have been filled with ocean water. That pretty boy educated youth was skinny as a stick and would snap in a strong breeze. How could he compare to this wild, muscular man? Wasting something this good would bring lightning down on your head. Well, things were different now. I was in charge, and I wasn't carrying on with the original's blind stupidity. This broad-shouldered, narrow-waisted, long-legged husband was mine to enjoy from now on. Mine alone. I was still dripping wet and shivering, so I hurried to the wardrobe. When I pulled it open, there was barely anything inside. I rummaged through and frowned. Every single piece was gray, black, or dark blue, all baggy and shapeless. The original Zhangmi had been dressing herself like a plain, modest, progressive woman, just to match the pretty boy's taste. What a crime. With curves like these, wearing those sack-like clothes was like smothering a garden in full bloom. I dug through the sad pile until I spotted something at the very bottom, a floral-fitted blouse with a cinched waist. It was a bit thin and tighter than the rest. The original had shoved it to the bottom because she thought it was too revealing. You're the one. I pulled it out without hesitation. I also found a pair of half-worn black pants and a bright red belly band for underneath. I peeled off my soaking clothes. My pale body hit the cool air, and even though I was mentally prepared, I still gasped when I looked down. The skin was porcelain white and silky smooth. The chest was impressively full and perky. The waist was tiny enough to wrap both hands around, and below that, generous curves in all the right places. This body. Forget He Zheng. Even I had to swallow hard looking at it. I quickly put on the red belly band, then pulled the floral blouse over it. The effect was instant and dramatic. The fabric stretched tight, outlining everything perfectly. I had a little idea. I undid the top 2 buttons on purpose, letting a sliver of smooth, white skin peek out. I tucked the blouse into the black pants at my waist, which only made my tiny waist look even more impossible and gave my walk a natural sway. I padded barefoot to the tiny round mirror on the table. The woman in the reflection had long black hair still damp and loose over her shoulders. Her nose and the corners of her eyes were flushed a delicate pink, looking vulnerable and sweet, while the view below the collar was pure dangerous temptation. Innocent and seductive all at once. An absolute knockout. I raised one eyebrow at the mirror, satisfied. Heavy footsteps sounded from outside the yard, getting closer. I immediately wiped the grin off my face, tiptoed back to the Kong, and arranged myself in a deliberate pose, leaning against the rolled-up bedding, legs crossed, casual but absolutely devastating. The footsteps stopped outside the door. A large hand pressed against the wooden door, and he pushed it open. He walked in carrying a big rough ceramic bowl. Steam rose from it, filling the room with the sharp smell of ginger and the sweetness of brown sugar. He set it down on the little table by the Kong with a loud thud. Drink it while it's hot. Sweat out the cold. He was about to turn and leave again, but his eyes betrayed him. They drifted toward the Kong, and then he froze solid. There I was, leaning against the bedding with my legs crossed, wearing that tight floral blouse that hugged everything like a second skin. And the collar. I'd left it hanging open on purpose, showing off a generous view of smooth white skin and the deep valley between. Whatever cold water he'd splashed on himself earlier was completely useless now. I could practically see the heat flooding back into him, rushing straight to his head. He stood there staring, eyes locked on, not even breathing. I was thrilled. So much for that iron willpower of his. He couldn't even move his feet. I put on my sweetest voice. "Hubby, my hands are too weak. Won't you feed me?" I leaned forward slightly, and the fabric at my collar drooped even lower. Everything was about to spill out. Then I heard it, a soft drip. I blinked and looked. A bright red drop of blood had landed right on the back of his big, calloused hand. Then another drop hit the dirt floor, blooming into a tiny red flower. Oh no! I scrambled to the edge of the Kong, forgetting all about my seductive pose. "Hee-jung, you're having a nosebleed." I was genuinely shocked. All I did was undo 2 buttons and show a little skin, and this man's nose started gushing blood? His fire was way too strong. If just looking made him bleed like this, what would happen when we actually, got down to business on this Kong? Would he pass out from blood loss? My brain went wild with those images while I frantically reached for the old towel by the bed to wipe his face. "Don't touch me." He dodged my hand like I was electric. He swiped the back of his rough hand under his nose, saw the bright red streak, and his tanned, handsome face turned the color of cooked liver. The blush spread all the way down his neck to the tips of his ears. How humiliating, a grown man getting a nosebleed from looking at his own wife. He couldn't even glance at me anymore. He turned around, and this big, towering man was suddenly tripping over his own feet. "Drink the ginger soup." He stammered that out and bolted through the door like a tiger was chasing him. Seconds later, I heard water splashing furiously in the yard. The man was dumping cold well water over his own head. Again. I picked up the steaming bowl of ginger soup and burst out laughing. He looked like a cold, fierce wolf on the outside, but peel that back and he was just a big, pure-hearted puppy who couldn't handle the slightest bit of teasing. This was going to be fun. I sipped the ginger soup in a great mood. The brown sugar sweetness slid down my throat and warmed me from the inside out. I'd just finished the last drop when the old wooden gate outside creaked open.
"Jangmi?"
"Are you in there?" A sharp, shrill female voice. My smile vanished instantly. I knew that voice. The memories told me exactly who it was. Wang Xiaoyan, a female educated youth from the city who stayed at the youth dormitory. This woman was always hanging around that scumbag Su Ziqing, calling herself his revolutionary comrade. Behind the scenes, she'd been stirring up trouble between the original Jiang Mi and her husband for ages. She was the one who helped plan today's whole river jumping stunt. I set the empty bowl down and took my time buttoning up my blouse, leaving just the top one undone. I slipped on my cloth shoes and stepped outside. Wang Xiaoyan was standing in the yard wearing a white polyester blouse, fancy stuff for this era, with her hair in 2 shiny braids. She was looking around at the firewood and farm tools with obvious disgust. When she saw me, jealousy flashed across her eyes before she could hide it. This fox spirit fell in the river and didn't even have the decency to look worse for it. If anything, I looked even more radiant than before. My waist was thin as a willow branch, a body practically built for temptation. She was cursing me in her head, but her face broke into a fake, eager smile. "Jiangmi, are you okay? I heard from villagers you fell in the water. Brother Ziqing is worried sick about you." I sneered inside. If he was so worried sick, why didn't that skinny rat come check on me himself? Instead, he sent his little messenger to sniff around. But I kept my face perfectly composed, weak and hopeful. "Really? Brother Ziqing isn't mad at me, is he?" Wang Xiaoyan glanced around to make sure nobody else was nearby, then pulled a crumpled grass paper package from her pocket and shoved it into my hands. "Here. Brother Ziqing asked me to bring you this." She lowered her voice, unable to keep the sourness out. "He said you caught a chill falling in the water, so he traded half a month's grain coupons for these rice crackers. Didn't eat a single one himself, saved them all for you." I looked down and unwrapped the rough paper. Too sad. Dried-out rice crackers with the sugar coating practically flaked off. "That's it?" I almost laughed out of sheer disbelief. The original Jiangmi had been sending this man white rabbit candies, fine flour, and wild pheasants that Heejung risked snowstorms to hunt, pouring everything into the youth dormitory like it was free. She'd fattened that parasite up nicely. And in return, he tossed her 2 pathetic rice sticks. He really did treat her like a beggar he was tossing scraps to. But then I thought about it differently. All those good things the original sent him? He wasn't keeping any of it. I was going to get every last bit back, with interest. It was time to settle this rotten debt. I immediately put on a look of touched surprise. I knew Brother Ziqing cared about me. Xiaoyan, could you pass him a message? Tell him I want to see him tonight. Contempt flickered through Wang Xiaoyan's eyes. This loose woman really did take the bait with the slightest pull. Pathetic. She swallowed her jealousy and patted my hand warmly. What a coincidence. That's exactly what Brother Ziqing wanted too. Tonight at 8, the old broken mill on the west side of the village. He'll be waiting for you. Says he has some heartfelt words he wants to tell you in private. Don't you dare stand him up. Don't worry, I'll be there right on time. I kept my head down, the corner of my lips curving up ever so slightly. What none of us knew was that on the other side of the wall, in the kitchen, Heejung was standing in the shadows holding the empty iron pot from the ginger soup. Every single word from the yard had drifted straight into his ears. Tonight at 8? The broken mill? Going to see Brother Ziqing? His back teeth ground together so hard they could crack, veins bulging at his temples. To hell with her dizzy head and twisted ankle. To hell with, I won't divorce you. All lies. Every word. And he'd been fool enough to go soft, letting her cling all over him, actually believing that falling in the river had changed her. Turns out that whole sweet, clingy act was just a show. She was stalling on the divorce papers so she could sneak out tonight to meet her pretty boy. Those two were clearly in love, and Heejung, what was he? Nothing. Just an uneducated dirt farmer. But even a dirt farmer has his pride. He wasn't going to be the pathetic fool who begged his wife to stay while she ran off to roll in the hay with another man. If she was so desperate for that soft-skinned city boy, fine. He'd let them have each other. You can't sweeten a melon by forcing it on the vine, and you can't fix a marriage by chaining down a woman who brings nothing but bad luck. This rotten marriage was ending. Tonight she could do whatever she wanted. But tomorrow at dawn, even if he had to drag her, he was hauling her to the brigade office to sign those divorce papers. The moment Wang Xiaoyan left, I tossed those pathetic rice crackers straight into the firewood pile. I dusted off my hands, shuffled back inside in my cloth shoes, and sat down on the warm Kong to do some mental math. Going through the original Jiangmi's memories, I wanted to spit blood. In an era where you needed ration tickets to buy a single matchstick, the original had poured everything into that worthless pretty boy Su Ziqing without saving a thing for herself. Last month, Heejung brought home 10 yuan from carpentry work in town. The money was barely warm in his pocket before the original secretly took it to the supply store and bought Su Ziqing a brand new polyester shirt. 2 weeks before that, Heejung hunted a fat wild rabbit in the mountains. The original didn't even blink, stewed the whole thing, and carried it to the youth dormitory. Heejung didn't get so much as a sip of broth. And that wasn't counting all the national grain coupons, meat tickets, and even the original's dowry, a used Shanghai brand wristwatch that she'd handed over piece by piece. The more I added up, the more my chest ached. Heejung was out there sweating under the sun doing backbreaking labor, and the original treated him like a personal ATM, funneling every penny to feed someone else's lifestyle. The only reason Su Ziqing looked so well-fed and healthy was because he was living off Heejung's blood and sweat. I bit my lip and cracked my knuckles. Everything you swallowed, you're going to cough back up with interest. That was my man's money, which basically made it my money now. Taking my money was the same as taking my life. The sun was sinking west, painting the room orange through the torn window paper. It was still a couple hours until 8 o'clock. I rubbed my empty stomach and decided to go find Heejung in the kitchen, show my face, let him know I was stepping out later. After teasing him that hard earlier, I needed to keep building some trust between us. I twisted my hair into a loose bun, checked the mirror, top button still undone, just the right amount of casual pretty, and stepped outside. Heejung, I called out softly. The yard was silent. I pushed open the kitchen door. Cold and empty. The fire in the stove had gone out, the counters were wiped clean, but the man himself was nowhere to be found.
Weird.
Where'd he go? I poked my head out toward the dirt road and caught a figure at the far end of the village path. Tall and broad, wearing a half-worn black shirt stretched tight over his muscles. He had his homemade hunting rifle slung over one shoulder and a gleaming machete tucked into his belt at the back. He was taking huge strides, walking fast as the wind, not once looking back, headed straight for the deep mountains behind the village. I leaned against the low fence and watched him disappear into the distance. From the look of all that gear, he was going hunting again. Everyone in the village knew Heejun couldn't sit still. Whenever the original Jiangmi threw her tantrums and told him to get out of her sight, he'd grab his supplies and vanish into those mountains, sometimes for 2 or 3 days. I pursed my lips and played with a strand of hair by my cheek. My guess? I'd gotten his blood pumping so bad earlier that he couldn't take it anymore, but he was too proud to show it, so he ran off to the mountains to burn off steam. Fine by me. Him being gone actually made tonight easier. I could go deal with that scumbag on my own without worrying about complications. Once I finished collecting what was owed tonight, I'd have plenty of time and plenty of tricks to warm up my stubborn husband when he came back from his hunt. I turned around and walked back inside, humming a little tune. Tonight, I was the star of the show, and I needed to get ready. What I didn't know was happening at the other end of the village. The sun had dropped behind the western hills, and the threshing yard behind the brigade office was going dark. A few speckled hens were still scratching around in the dead grass. Shunzi, a village kid known for his fast legs and sweet tongue, who liked to follow Heejun around for a taste of whatever meat he brought back, was squatting by a haystack, chewing on a foxtail grass stem and shooting the breeze with some idle guys.
Bang!
A heavy rifle butt slammed into the packed dirt, kicking up a cloud of dust that nearly made Shunzi choke on his grass. He looked up and met a face dark as a thundercloud. Ziecheng? Bro. Shunzi scrambled to his feet, eyes darting over the hunting rifle and the machete. What are you doing? It's almost dark. You going after wild boar in the mountains. Heejun ignored the other guys entirely. He just jerked his chin toward the wall around the corner. Come here. Got a job for you. Shunzi didn't dare dawdle. He followed him to a sheltered spot behind the mud wall. Heejun fished a crumpled half-pack of Dakeman cigarettes from his pocket and bit one between his teeth. A match flared in his rough palm, the blue-yellow flame throwing hard light on his clenched jaw. The bitter smoke drifted past his face, flickering between light and shadow in the dusk. Tonight at 8. The broken mill on the west side of the village. Go watch it for me. Shunzi blinked, scratching his head. The old mill? The roof leaks like a sieve. Barely any tiles left. What's there to watch? Somebody's stealing commune grain, not grain. Heejung's fingers tightened around the cigarette, crushing wrinkles into the paper. Watch that skinny dog Su Ziecheng. Shunzi's eyes went wide. Everyone in the village had heard the gossip about the educated youth. Always dressed neat and clean, always talking about culture and refinement, but behind closed doors he was an expert at sweet-talking girls and married women. Especially Heejung's own wife, that dramatic, high-maintenance beauty who'd recently been so charmed she nearly handed over everything in the house down to the stove ashes. Shunzi's throat bobbed. He leaned in closer and whispered, Bro, did you hear something? That pretty boy monkey's meeting someone in the Hayden night? Is sister-in-law going to? Shut up. Heejung's eyes snapped open and Shunzi swallowed the rest of his words, clamping both hands over his mouth. It went quiet behind the wall. Heejung's mind drifted back to the image of me leaning on the Kong, that floral blouse with a collar hanging open, skin white enough to blind, that impossibly soft waist, those boneless little hands roaming all over his chest through the wet fabric. Shameless. 1 minute clinging to him, calling him hubby, the next arranging a secret meeting with another man at a broken-down mill. The fire in his chest surged up, and he bit down harder on the cigarette. I don't care who he's meeting. Just hide yourself. If they're only talking, sit tight and listen like it's a show. Shunzi waited eagerly for the rest. Heejung paused for one beat. His Adam's apple dipped. But if that bastard Su puts his hands where they don't belong, if he touches what he shouldn't touch, you rip the roof off that mill. Understood. What I didn't know was what happened after He Zheng walked away that evening. Shunzi had nodded frantically at He Zheng's orders. Got it, got it. The second that guy tries to take his pants off, I'll bang a gong and scream, pervert, so loud, he won't get away with anything. He Zheng kicked him in the shin. Who told you to scream anything? Shunzi hopped around holding his leg, face scrunched up in pain. He Zheng held his temper down. If Shunzi actually made a scene and brought the brigade secretary and the militia running, it would ruin me. In this era, getting labeled a loose woman could destroy a person's life. People's spit alone could bury you. And for all my big talk, if a crowd surrounded me screaming insults, I'd probably die of fright on the spot. Tomorrow morning, he was getting those divorce papers. Things had gone this far, no point pushing me over a cliff on top of it. Shunzi rubbed his leg. Okay, no yelling. What if I throw rocks and pretend the place is haunted? Use your brain. Don't get caught and don't hurt anyone. He Zheng pulled the cigarette from his lips. Ash fell on his shoe, and he didn't bother brushing it off. Just don't let anyone get killed. Do this right, and I'll take you hunting in the mountains tomorrow for a good meal. Shunzi's eyes lit up at the mention of meat.
Deal.
I won't blink all night. I'll watch that pretty boy like a hawk. He Zheng dropped his half-smoked cigarette and ground it out under his boot. Without another word, he grabbed his rifle strap and walked into the darkness. Shunzi watched his broad-shouldered figure disappear, caught between laughing and not daring to, muttering under his breath. What kind of life is this? He knows his wife is going to meet another man, and he secretly sends a bodyguard to keep her safe. Brother Zheng really got the short end of the stick. The truth was, He Zheng didn't actually go deep into the mountains. He didn't have the heart for it. His grip on the rifle tightened and loosened. He'd originally planned to shoot a couple wild pheasants. I'd fallen in the river today, frozen until my lips turned blue. All we had at home was rough rice, and he'd wanted to bring back some good meat and make me a hot, nourishing soup.
But now?
My head was full of that pretty boy, and I couldn't wait to run off to some broken-down mill. He Zheng kicked a tree so hard the leaves rained down. I'm such an idiot. He ground his teeth and cursed himself. I didn't deserve that meat. That dramatic little princess should go chew on those 2 pathetic rice crackers Su Zicheng gave her. He spun around to march back to the village. But after 2 steps, my pale, ghostly white face floated through his mind again. And my soft voice leaning against his chest, whimpering, I'm so dizzy. His feet froze to the ground. His long legs might as well have grown roots. They refused to carry him back toward the village. He stood there deadlocked for a solid half-minute, then ripped at his collar with a black expression.
Fine.
Call it a farewell dinner. He angrily raised the hunting rifle again. After this meal, tomorrow he'd go to the brigade and get those divorce papers. From then on, whether I lived or died, whoever's haystack I rolled around in, none of it would be his problem anymore. Having convinced himself, his tall figure finally disappeared into the dark mountains. Meanwhile, I was standing in front of that tiny mirror, buttoning my floral blouse all the way up to the top. The tricks I'd used on He Zheng were absolutely not for that pretty boy. He wasn't worthy of seeing anything. I dabbed some cold water around my eyes, rubbed until they looked red and puffy, and messed up my hair a little. In an instant, the mirror showed a completely different woman, no longer a seductive temptress, but a pitiful young wife who'd been bullied by her brutal husband. Satisfied, I slipped out the gate and melted into the night. The old broken mill on the west side of the village. Autumn wind howled through holes in the mud walls, and the few remaining roof tiles looked ready to fall any second. Su Zicheng was pacing by the abandoned stone mill with his sleeves tucked in. That brand-new white polyester shirt of his gleamed in the moonlight, bought with the 10 yuan of He Zheng's carpentry wages that the original Jiangmi had stolen last month. When he heard my footsteps, his eyes lit up and he rushed over with his most devoted, lovesick expression. Mimi, you finally came. Xiaoyan told me you fell in the water. I was so heartbroken I couldn't even eat dinner. He reached for my hand. Cold mockery flashed through my eyes. I jerked sideways, dodging his greasy paw. Don't touch me. My voice trembled on purpose as I stepped back. His hand hung in midair. He figured I was still upset about the river incident, so he cranked up the tender act. Mimi, you've suffered so much. It's all my fault. I should have stopped you from jumping. How are you feeling? Does your head still hurt? The second he brought that up, I turned on the waterworks. Tears rolled down my cheeks on command. Brother Zicheng, I can't take this life anymore. I sobbed and wiped my eyes, making my voice as miserable as possible. I jumped in the river today to force Hezheng to divorce me, but that brute went crazy. Not only did he refuse, he dragged me home and beat me. He said if I tried to leave, he'd break my legs. Su Zicheng was stunned. He'd always assumed Hezheng was a pushover who'd cave the moment I made a fuss. Then what will it take for him to agree? He asked anxiously.
Hezheng said.
He'll agree to the divorce, but only if we settle all the debts first. I lifted my teary eyes and looked pointedly at the shiny white shirt on his body. He said everything I gave you has to come back. The polyester shirt bought with his money, the fine flower, the white rabbit candies, and my Shanghai brand watch. Every single thing. If even 1 cent is missing, I paused deliberately, dropping my voice to a terrified whisper. If 1 cent is missing, he's coming after you with the machete he uses to chop wild boars. And then he'll go to the commune and report both of us for having an improper relationship. We'd both get sent to a labor farm. The words, report, and labor farm drained every drop of color from Su Zicheng's lovesick face. In this era, a morality accusation was deadly serious. At best, you'd be paraded through the village with a loose woman sign around your neck. At worst, you'd be shipped off to hard labor. And Hezheng, that walking mountain of muscle and menace, if he really lost it, he could crush Su Zicheng's bones with one hand. But giving back everything he'd eaten and taken? That was like cutting his own flesh. Su Zicheng forced an awkward laugh, his eyes darting around. Mimi, those things were gifts you gave me freely, tokens of our revolutionary friendship. How can he ask for them back? Hezheng is being a thug. He's sabotaging the educated youth program. If he won't give it back, then I'll just go die in front of him. I cried even louder, covering my face in a perfect picture of despair. I knew it, Brother Zicheng. You don't care about my life at all. My death means less to you than a few dozen yuan. Mimi, please stop crying. Su Zicheng was terrified of attracting passing villagers or, worse, Hezheng himself. He gritted his teeth and dug through his pockets. After searching his entire body, he pulled out a few crumpled small bills, 2 grain coupons, and 1 industrial coupon. Mimi, my family hasn't sent money yet this month. All I have is 7 yuan and 50 cents. He shoved the pitiful wad into my hands like it physically hurt him. This is my last bit of food money. Take it and keep him calm for now. I looked down at those sad little bills in my palm and cursed him in my head.
Chiaprat.
But on the outside, I pushed my performance to the limit, shaking my head with a trembling pout. Brother Zicheng, this isn't nearly enough. Just that shirt on your back cost 10 yuan. When Hezheng sees this handful of change, he'll think you're mocking him. Tomorrow morning he'll show up at the youth dormitory with his hunting rifle and come for your life. The mention of the hunting rifle made Su Zicheng's knees buckle.
No.
Mimi, listen, take this back to him first. Tell Hezheng I'll find a way to get the rest. Yes, I'll scrape together the money. He grabbed my sleeve desperately. Just keep that brute calm and buy me a couple more days. Once things cool down and I've got the full amount, we'll run away together. A cold flash of triumph crossed my eyes. Every cent I could squeeze out of this scumbag was a cent earned. I stuffed the 750 and the coupons into my inner pocket, sniffled pitifully, and gave him one last sad look. Then hurry up. If Hezheng snaps, neither of us will survive. I turned and left without a shred of hesitation. Su Zicheng stood in that drafty ruin staring at his empty pockets, furious and scared, and kicked the half-bald broom next to him. What I didn't know was that behind the wall, crouching in a pile of dead grass, Shunzi had been listening the whole time. The wind was loud, so he only caught bits and pieces, jagged fragments that floated to his ears. Force Hezheng to divorce. Scrape together money. Neither of us will have good days. Run away together. Shunzi was shaking with rage. That shameless woman. Heejung had been worried about her safety tonight and sent him here as a bodyguard, and she was actually plotting with that pretty boy against his brother. She was planning to sweet-talk Heejung into staying calm, then team up with the scumbag to drain the family dry and disappear together. Shunzi spat on the ground, scrambled out from behind the haystack, and sprinted toward the mountains like his pants were on fire. He had to warn Heejung. That woman's heart was pitch black. She couldn't be kept any longer. Divorce her immediately. Heejung deserved better. Halfway up the mountain path, a tall dark shadow suddenly loomed in front of him. Shunzi nearly jumped out of his skin, then recognized who it was. Bro. Thank God I found you. He grabbed Heejung's arm, gasping for air. Heejung had been wandering the forest aimlessly, my face stuck in his head, too distracted to hunt anything. He'd been heading back down. Running like you're late for your own funeral, his voice was low and hard. Then his eye twitched and a bad feeling hit him. Did that pretty boy put his hands on her? Shunzi slapped his own thigh frantically and shook his head. It's worse than that. Your wife's heart is completely rotten. Heejung's eyes sharpened. He grabbed Shunzi by the collar. Straighten your tongue and tell me what happened. Shunzi poured out everything he'd heard, adding plenty of dramatic seasoning. I heard it clear as day. Sister-in-law told that monkey she's going to force you into a divorce. They're pooling money together, said they can't stay in the village, and they're planning to run away with everything you own. The wind rustled through the trees. Heejung's massive frame turned to stone. The air around him seemed to drop 10 degrees. Run away together? He should have known. My whole act today, falling in the river and suddenly turning sweet, hugging him, calling him hubby, every bit of it was fake. In the faint moonlight, Shunzi could see his brother's face had gone black as the bottom of a burned pot. Bro. Shunzi swallowed hard. You okay? Let's go catch her before she steals all the money and bolts. Heejung shoved him away and charged down the mountain, radiating murderous energy with every step. Meanwhile, I was strolling back to the house in a perfectly good mood. 7 yuan 50 and some coupons sat in my pocket. Not a fortune, but at least I'd plucked feathers from that iron rooster. Heejung reached the yard wall first. He stopped, swung the rifle off his shoulder, and turned to Shunzi behind him. Go home and sleep. If one word about tonight leaks out, I'll beat your mouth inside out. Shunzi shrank his neck, thought about adding more fuel to the fire, caught one look at that black expression, and scurried away. Heejung pushed through the gate and crossed to the main room in a few long strides. The dim kerosene lamp was burning inside. I was sitting cross-legged on the Kong, smoothing out the wrinkled bills and coupons with my fingertips. I heard him come in and looked up. My fitted floral blouse was clinging tight, collar half open, showing plenty of white skin. Heejung's jaw clenched so hard it clicked. Before today, I always wore baggy, shapeless clothes around the house. One dip in the river and suddenly I was dressed like this, tight and tempting, and I'd worn it to meet that pretty boy at the mill. All my scheming went straight towards seducing other men. The rage he'd barely buried on the mountain came roaring back twice as strong. I didn't notice any of it. I tucked the bills away, hopped off the Kong in my cloth shoes, and trotted over to him with a bright face. You're back. I held out the money in my palm like a proud little offering. Look. Tonight I went to find Susie Ching. He cut me off. I froze. How did he know? But actually good, saved me the trouble of explaining. My eyes curved into happy crescents, and my lips tilted up. That's right. I want to get that skinny dog's. Jiangmi, do you really think I'm your fool? He stepped forward, his huge frame casting me completely in shadow. His head was full of what Shunzi had told him on the mountain. Force him into a divorce. Pool money and run away. And the line, take this back to keep him calm for now. So that was her game. Go visit the lover, bring back a handful of crumpled bills, and try to shut him up with it. I was completely confused by his sudden fury. What was his problem? I stepped closer and reached for his sleeve. Why are you throwing a tantrum? I want to get back the money she originally. He flicked his wrist away from my hand. He thought I was filthy. He turned to the corner, slammed the rifle onto the wooden rack, grabbed an old towel, and started wiping mud off the barrel with his back to me. Drop the act. He scrubbed the gun without looking at me. Keep those $750 for yourself. Buy a bus ticket. My smile died. Piece by piece, it drained from my face. Hee-jung threw the towel down and turned around, towering over me, locking onto my eyes. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, brigade office. Each word hit like a hammer. We're getting the divorce papers. This time I mean it. Whoever backs out is a damn dog. My eyes went wide. My brain couldn't keep up. What was going on? What was wrong with this man? Everything was fine during the day, and now he's back to demanding a divorce? Was this some kind of unstoppable plot force from the novel? Because I remembered exactly what happened in the book after Hee-jung divorced the original Jung-mi. He went south, started a business, became a powerful tycoon within a few years, and met his real soulmate, some gentle, refined woman. Meanwhile, the original Jung-mi was nothing but a stepping stone to make their love story shine brighter. She ended up tortured to death in the mountains without even bones left behind. A chill shot up my spine. No way. I absolutely could not let this divorce happen. Even if he kicked my legs out from under me, I'd cling to this man with my teeth. I won't divorce you. I threw myself at him and grabbed his hands. Hubby, what's wrong with you? Why are you suddenly so angry? Did those gossipy villagers fill your head with nonsense? His eyes dropped and landed, unavoidably, on the white skin rising and falling at my collar with each panicked breath. He jerked his arm free from where it had pressed against my chest. Jung-mi, I told you, drop the act. I don't have enough money to fund this big performance of yours. He remembered every word Shunzi told him. He'd rather die poor than be my stepping stone. I'm not acting. I was nearly jumping up and down with frustration. How could I make this stubborn man believe me? If you weren't acting, why did you jump in the river today? He shot back. The words flew out of my mouth before I could think. Maybe the river water was cold enough to wash all the paste out of my brain. What kind of answer was that? Even I knew that sounded ridiculous. Hee-jung wasn't buying it for a second. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, brigade office. After that, you can be with whoever you want. If you won't go, I'll tie you up and drag you there. He walked out and slammed the door behind him. I stared at the closed door, so frustrated I kicked the edge of the Kong. Ow. I grabbed my toes and hissed in pain. What kind of mess was this? I went to collect a debt, and somehow he thinks I'm scheming against him? I flopped back onto the Kong, utterly defeated. What was I supposed to do now? My brain was a tangled mess. This was all the original Jung-mi's fault. If she hadn't done so many stupid things, Hee-jung wouldn't be this guarded against me. Now my plan had completely backfired. Was this divorce really inevitable? I sprawled out like a starfish on the rough bedsheets and sighed. I wasn't letting go of this man. I refused to give up. I closed my eyes and started frantically plotting my next move, crying, screaming, throwing fits, clinging to him like glue tomorrow. But my eyelids kept getting heavier. It was my first day in this body, and I'd thought the unfamiliar surroundings would keep me awake. But this body was completely exhausted. Within minutes, I was out cold. It was a terrible sleep. Nightmares filled with the original owner's horrifying fate in those mountains. I tried to run, but my body felt like it was made of lead. Probably because of falling in cold water earlier, sometime in the middle of the night I started feeling freezing cold. I curled up into a tight ball without realizing it and pulled the blanket around me as tight as I could. The next morning, dawn was barely breaking when heavy footsteps echoed through the yard. Hee-jung was already up, his face black as charcoal. He was out there chopping wood, each swing crashing down with tremendous force, like he was taking his anger out on the logs. He waited until the sun came up. Still no sound from the room. He threw down the axe and marched to the window. He raised his fist and knocked hard on the wooden frame. Jung-mi, get up. Silence. Nothing. His brow tightened and his voice went colder. It's already 8. You're still sleeping. Somewhere deep in my fog, I heard the knocking. I tried to answer, but my throat felt like I'd swallowed razor blades. All that came out was a faint whimper. Outside, his patience was running dry. Jung-mi, don't play dead. He gave a cold laugh through the window. Don't think hiding in there staying quiet will get you out of this. I'm telling you, this divorce is happening today. I'm a man of my word. I've made up my mind. Whoever doesn't show up is a dog. He stood there, chest heaving. He figured I was pulling the same old tricks. Cry, scream, threaten suicide. Yesterday, swearing up and down I wouldn't divorce him, and today playing turtle, hiding in my shell? Normally by now, the old Jiangmi would already be screaming insults, calling him a dirt farmer. But today, it was so quiet inside. Unnervingly quiet. Something uneasy stirred in his gut. He pounded the door twice more. Jiangmi, can you hear me? If you don't get up, I'm coming in to drag you out. Still nothing. He took a deep breath, shoved the door open, and stormed inside. What kind of trick are you pulling now? His voice died the instant he saw the Kong. I was wrapped tight in the blanket, curled into a tiny ball, shaking uncontrollably. My face, the part showing above the covers, was an alarming shade of red, and my breathing came out heavy and ragged. Heejung froze at the edge of the Kong. Every trace of anger vanished from his eyes in an instant. He started to reach out, then stopped midair. Last night's words echoed in his head. Drop the act. This woman had so many tricks. Could she be faking sick just to avoid the divorce? Jiangmi, what are you performing now? His voice stayed hard. This won't work on me. Get up. I stirred slightly. My lashes trembled as I forced my eyes open the tiniest crack. Everything was blurry and unfocused. So cold. My voice was completely wrecked, hoarse, weak, with no strength behind it at all. It even carried a small, pitiful sob. His breath caught. My eyes were glazed over, unable to focus on anything. This didn't look like acting. He threw aside all hesitation and pulled back half the blanket. The back of his hand pressed against my forehead, burning hot. The heat made his palm flinch back like he'd touched a stove. It felt like a fire had been lit straight inside his chest. I was running a dangerously high fever. Yesterday I'd fallen in freezing river water and only had one bowl of ginger soup. Then in the middle of the night I'd gone out in the cold wind to meet someone at the mill. An iron body couldn't take that kind of punishment, let alone mine. Damn it all, he ground his teeth and cursed under his breath. Impossible to tell if it was anger or worry. Through the haze, that cool touch on my forehead felt wonderful. Like an instinct, I nuzzled toward his big hand the way a cold kitten pushes toward warmth. Hubby. It hurts. That weak little hubby made Heejung flinch. He yanked his hand back, his Adam's apple bobbing hard. You're delirious from the fever. Stop talking nonsense. He forced the words out and was about to turn away, but a burning hot little hand caught the corner of his shirt. My blouse had ridden up from all the tossing and turning, showing a strip of pale waist. Don't go. I was half out of my mind with fever, running on pure instinct. I grabbed his shirt and then wrapped both arms around his solid thigh. I won't divorce you. I'd rather die than go to that brigade office. I pressed my scorching cheek against the rough fabric of his pants, whimpering softly. Even through the cloth, he could feel how unnaturally hot I was. Every muscle in his body went rigid. He stood completely still, not daring to move. Jiangmi, let go. His voice was wrecked, a vein throbbing at his temple. No, I held on tighter. I even rubbed my head against his leg like a kitten. If you don't want me anymore, I'll just die sick right here. When I thought about what happened to the original Jiangmi after the divorce, tortured to death by those monsters in the mountains, real tears slid down my cheeks. I must have looked like an abandoned stray cat. Heejung took several deep breaths. In the end, he couldn't bring himself to shove me away. Fine. Stop crying. His voice came out flat and dry, carrying a helplessness he didn't even notice himself. You're burning up this bad, and you're not worried about frying your brain. This woman was already dumb enough. If the fever made her even stupider, she wouldn't be able to take care of herself. And would that scummy pretty boy want a brain-fried burden? I sniffled and looked up at him, pitiful as can be. My eyes were red and glassy, with fever tears. If I go stupid, will you not want me anymore? My voice was so hoarse it barely came out. Something jolted in his chest. He looked away from my foggy eyes. He straightened up and forced down whatever was stirring inside him. Stop talking nonsense. We're going to the clinic first. He kept his face cold. Can you stand? If you can walk, put your shoes on. I struggled to sit up, pouting, tears dripping steadily. I can't get up. I have zero strength in my body, and it was true, not only was I weak, the whole room was spinning. Even sitting up, I kept sliding back down. Such a pain. He muttered it like a complaint, but his body told a different story. He turned, walked to the old wardrobe, and pulled out one of his own black jackets. Put this on. He came back and draped it over my head and shoulders. The jacket carried a faint smell of tobacco and something cool and masculine that was uniquely his. It wrapped around me like a cocoon. Bundled up in his oversized clothes, I looked even smaller and more fragile. His eyes swept down and caught my bare feet. My toes were pale and round, curled up slightly from the cold.
His throat bobbed.
He grabbed my cloth shoes from the floor. Lift your foot. He dropped to one knee beside the Kong and his big, rough hand gripped my ankle. Those calloused palms scraped against my smooth skin as he slid the shoes on. I obediently raised my feet and let him do it. Hubby, you're so good to me, I mumbled quietly. His hands froze. The tips of his ears turned dark red. Shut up. Stop feeding me sweet poison. Shoes on, he stood and looked down at me. I truly had no strength left. The fever had drained everything. I tried to scoop myself to the edge of the Kong using my hands. The moment my heels touched the ground, my knees buckled, and I pitched forward. He Zheng's reflexes were lightning fast. One long arm shot out, his hand caught my tiny waist, and he pulled me into his chest. I slammed into that wall of hard muscle, and my head spun even worse. You're too dumb to live, he squeezed the words through his teeth. Then he turned around, his broad back facing me, and crouched down slightly. Get on. I stared for 2 seconds, then a sneaky little grin curved my lips. I threw myself onto his back without hesitation, locked my arms around his thick neck, and pressed my face against his wide shoulder. His hands reached back and hooked under my knees. Even through the fabric, certain very soft parts of me pressed firmly against his back. The muscles across his shoulders went rock hard. His Adam's apple rolled twice. He started walking fast toward the door. The moment we stepped outside the gate, a cool autumn breeze hit us. I shrank deeper into his big jacket, shivering hard, and squeezed my arms tighter around him. Stop squirming. His voice was low and strained. He was fighting the urge to dump me in the nearest haystack. I looked skinny from the outside, but on his back, I was soft absolutely everywhere. Mornings in the countryside were always busy. The work bell hadn't rung yet, and villagers were scattered along the dirt road, eating breakfast from big bowls. Heejun was tall with long legs, and carrying someone on his back made him stand out even more. Add a woman to the picture, and every single villager's eyes were locked on us. Under the big locust tree at the village entrance, a woman named Li Sumei was stitching shoe soles with Widow Zhao. When she spotted us, she slapped her own thighs so hard, she almost dropped the shoe. Well, would you look at that? Isn't that he number 3 and his drama queen wife? Li Sumei's eyes were wide, her voice carrying across the road. Yesterday afternoon, she was at the river threatening to kill herself over a divorce, and this morning he's carrying her on his back. Widow Zhao spat out a sunflower seed shell and sneered. Where else would they be heading? Walking toward the brigade office. Must be going to get divorce papers. That Jiang girl's really something, making the man carry her to her own divorce. And He Zheng's got no backbone either, wearing a green hat and still serving her hand and foot. Those words were loud enough to ride the wind straight into He Zheng's ears.
His feet stopped.
His jawline went tight as wire, veins bulging across the backs of his hands. He turned his head, dark eyes locking onto the women under the tree, ready to explode. But before he could say a word, I moved first. I'd been drifting in a feverish haze, but those nasty comments snapped me half awake. I hadn't even secured my grip on this man yet, and these gossips were out here, making things worse. I yanked the jacket off my head, revealing my fever-flushed but still strikingly pretty face. Widow Zhao, did you forget to brush your teeth this morning? I cleared my scratchy throat, both arms locked tight around He Zheng's neck, and raised my voice to a full street shout. Which eye of yours saw us going to get a divorce? My shout froze every single villager in their tracks. Widow Zhao's jaw dropped. The old Jiangmi would never have publicly claimed He Zheng as her man. She used to act disgusted by the very idea. I caught a cold last night, and I'm running a high fever. I can't walk, so my man is carrying me to the clinic because he cares about me. I rubbed my face against Hezheng's neck on purpose, marking my territory for everyone to see. Mind your own business, people gasped. My man? He cares about me? Was this really the same Jiangmi who spent every day calling Hezheng a stinking dirt farmer? Hiding in the back of the crowd, Shunzi nearly dropped his breakfast bowl. Last night he'd heard me plotting to run away with Su Ziqing, and now I was publicly clinging to Hezheng? I swept my gaze across the stunned villagers and kept going. My husband and I are doing just fine. We are never getting divorced. Alive, I'm his woman. Dead, I'm his ghost. If anyone dares gossip behind our backs and try to break up our marriage, I'll rip their rotten mouth right off their face. Dead silence under the big locust tree. Hezheng's hands tightened under my legs. My heartbeat was pounding through the thin fabric against his back. Alive, his woman.
Dead, his ghost.
How high was this woman's fever that she'd scream something that crazy in the middle of the street? After that outburst, I deflated like a popped balloon. All that fighting spirit had been fueled by pure stubbornness, and now the bill came due. My fever spiked worse. My head felt like a broken bellows wheezing back and forth, and the world started spinning. I surrendered fast, wrapping my arms tight around his neck and pressing my hot cheek into the curve of his shoulder. Hubby, I whimpered through my stuffy nose. I can't. My head's even dizzier now. Several seconds of total silence. Widow Zhao sat there with her mouth open wide enough to stuff an egg in. Had Jiangmi actually fried her brain with that fever? Li Sumei recovered first and muttered sourly. What an act. Playing the delicate flower, pretending she's some rich lady. Probably did something shameful behind someone's back last night, and now she's out here performing for the whole village. Widow Zhao chimed in. Exactly. Does she think we're all blind? Hezheng stopped walking. His belly was still full of anger. He still thought I was putting on a show, a complete performance, right down to shameless declarations in public. But the feeble whimpering against his back, the alarming heat radiating from my body, and then those nasty comments from the peanut gallery, something shifted. His fury found a new target. He stood there, and his eyes drifted casually down to the dirt road beside his feet. A small stone, about the size of a baby's fist. His jaw clenched. He kicked it hard.
Bang!
The stone shot forward like a bullet, grazed past Widow Zhao's calf, and smashed into the rim of the old water jar behind her. A thick chunk of ceramic exploded off the edge. Widow Zhao screamed and fell on her backside into a mud puddle by the tree roots. Li Sumei went white, her sewing basket scattering everywhere. Hezheng looked down at them. His voice was level, almost calm, but carried the kind of menace that makes your spine go cold. If you've got that much free time, go ask the brigade for extra farmland. His cold gaze swept across the group of gossips under the tree. If I hear one more person running their mouth behind our backs, they'll end up like that stone. Every villager holding a breakfast bowl turned to stone. Hezheng usually kept his head down, worked hard, and let gossip roll off him like water. Nobody had ever seen him blow up like this. It was a first. Shunzi, hiding at the very back of the crowd, nearly dislocated his jaw. His sweet potato porridge was sloshing over his hand, and he didn't even notice. What was happening? Last night on the mountain, Hezheng had been ready to murder someone over what he'd heard. He'd been dead set on divorce. One night's sleep, and now he was defending me in public? Shunzi rubbed his eyes hard. Did this woman know some kind of witchcraft? Hezheng ignored the stunned crowd, hitched me up higher on his back, and strode toward the village clinic. Once we left those people behind, and it was just the two of us on the dirt road, a gust of autumn wind made me shiver and cling even tighter. My head was swimming, but my mind was sharp enough to know what had just happened. That man had genuinely stood up for me back there. Whatever he was thinking on the inside, this was a crack in the ice, a real one. Hubby, you were so cool just now. I buried my face in the worn fabric of a shirt. You can't bear to divorce me, can you? His teeth ground together audibly. Shut up. One more word, and I'm throwing you in a ditch. You wouldn't. I felt completely safe. His shoulders were broad and rock-solid, and even on this bumpy dirt road, his back stayed perfectly straight. Heejun didn't believe a single sweet word coming out of my mouth. He'd heard everything last night on the mountain. This woman would risk her life and fake anything for a few bucks. These pretty words were just another trick to keep him away from the brigade office.
Fine.
He'd see how long I could keep this up. After the clinic, after you take the medicine and the fever breaks, we're still going to get those divorce papers. He tossed that out cold as ice. I rolled my eyes behind his back. Tough nut to crack. But no worries. For this kind of man, harsh mouth, honest body, I had all the patience in the world. We reached the village clinic soon enough. Inside was just one old barefoot doctor named Lee, wearing a white coat and sorting herbs through reading glasses. He looked up over his glasses when he heard us come in. Well, he number 3. What's your city princess throwing a fit about this time? Another hunger strike. Old Lee never minced words. Everyone in the village knew I was a drama queen. The original Jiangmi had faked being sick multiple times just to trick Heejun into buying her fancy malted milk powder from town. Heejun said nothing. He walked to the worn wooden bench inside and bent his knees slightly. Get down. I slid off his back like a noodle, half my weight still leaning against his arm. Dr. Lee, I'm really sick this time. I sniffled. My scratchy voice was proof enough that this wasn't fake. Heejun pushed me down into the chair. She fell in the river yesterday. Started burning up in the middle of the night. That was all he said, short and blunt. Old Dr. Lee took one look at my flushed cheeks and cracked lips and stopped joking around. He pulled a glass thermometer from the drawer. Under your arm. Let's get a reading. I eyed that cold glass tube and instinctively shrank back. It's cold. Heejun frowned, reached over, and took the thermometer straight from the doctor's hand. He crouched down in front of me, one knee on the ground, and his big hand reached right inside the oversized jacket. Through the thin floral blouse, he grabbed my wrist, lifted my arm, and slid the thermometer into my armpit before I could even react. His rough calluses scraped across the sensitive skin at my side. I couldn't help shivering. Hold it tight, he ordered without looking at my face. 5 minutes later, Old Lee held the thermometer up to the window light. 39.2. You're practically on fire, he shook his head. Pills won't work fast enough. You're getting an injection. The moment I heard injection, every hair on my body stood up. I'd seen the syringes they used in this era. The needles were absurdly thick, like getting stabbed with a nail. No injection. I shot up from the chair on reflex, got dizzy immediately, and collapsed right back down. I grabbed Heejun's shirt hem, my face pure terror. Hubby, I'll take medicine. I don't care how bitter it is. I'll swallow every drop. Just please no needle. Old Lee was calmly preparing the glass syringe on a metal tray. Girl, you're burning your brain out, and you want to be picky? If this fever cooks your head, whose fault will that be? Heejun looked down at my panicked face. This woman had the nerve to jump in a river to fake her own death, but a needle made her fall apart? You don't get a choice. He didn't waste any more words. He sat down next to me on the bench, wrapped one long arm around me, and dragged me back when I tried to scoot away. His hand clamped down on my shoulder like an iron vice. Hold still. Pinned completely, my eyes went red instantly. You're doing this on purpose. You want to hurt me so you can trade me in for a new wife. My accusation made zero logical sense, but the tears came pouring down anyway. Heejun was so annoyed by my crying his chest felt tight and stuffy. When Old Lee walked over with that terrifyingly long syringe full of medicine, I tried to burrow straight into Heejun's chest. His back went rigid. My feverish body heat was soaking through our clothes into his skin. He raised his other hand and shoved my head firmly against his chest, blocking my view entirely. Do it. One word to the doctor. I couldn't see a thing. All I felt was a coolness on my arm, then a sharp, vicious stab of pain. HHH, I yelped and did the only thing instinct told me to. I opened my mouth and bit down on Heejun's chest muscle, right through his shirt. My teeth didn't have much force behind them, but the sudden wet softness of my mouth through that thin fabric nearly short-circuited every nerve in his body. His breathing stopped for half a second. Thankfully, Old Lee was fast. He pushed the medicine in and pulled the needle out in one smooth motion.
Done.
Press on it for a bit. Take some pills home for the next 2 days. I let go of his shirt, eyes still blurry with tears, feeling like half my arm had gone numb. Heejung stood and turned away fast. He walked to the counter to pay, and nobody saw his red ears or how tightly his back muscles were clenched. Give me 2 days of anti-infection pills and some fever medicine too. He slapped the money on the counter, voice pressed low. I sat there wilted on the bench, pressing the injection spot. The fever hadn't dropped yet, and I felt even weaker than before. Heejung grabbed the medicine, turned around, and was about to pick me up again, when the clinic's thin cloth curtain got shoved open from outside. A rush of cold autumn air swept in. I shivered and looked up. Su Ziqing burst through the door, panting hard. He was still wearing that white polyester shirt, hair messy from running. His eyes darted around the room until they landed on me slumped on the bench, and Heejung standing beside me like a god of death. Su Ziqing's feet glued to the floor. He'd heard from Widow Zhao under the tree that Heejung had carried me out this morning, that I couldn't even walk and my face was white as paper. His immediate conclusion? I must have gone home last night asking for money, made Heejung furious, and gotten beaten so badly I couldn't get out of bed. He instantly switched to a face full of righteous outrage. Mimi, are you okay? He raised his voice, deliberately dramatic, and took 2 steps forward like he was going to heroically shield me. Heejung turned. His towering frame blocked me completely. His half-lidded eyes raked over Su Ziqing's white shirt like a blade. Get out. 3 words squeezed from between his teeth. Su Ziqing swallowed hard but forced himself to stand tall.
Heejung.
This is feudal patriarchy. Mimi is a progressive young woman. How can you beat her until she can't walk over some domestic dispute? I'm going to report you to the brigade for assaulting women. Sitting behind Heejung, I nearly threw up from disgust. This scumbag really knew how to cast himself as the hero. Last night, he'd been sweating bullets over handing over 7 yuan, and today he shows up playing the devoted revolutionary comrade. He was obviously terrified that Heejung would actually show up at the youth dormitory with his hunting rifle to collect debts, so he came to test the waters. Old Lee was behind the counter, glasses sliding to the tip of his nose, ears perked up like satellite dishes. He'd completely stopped working. This was too good to miss. Heejung didn't make a move. He turned and looked at me. He wanted to see if I was going to use this pretty boy's entrance to publicly distance myself from him, use the scene to force a trip to the brigade office for divorce papers. After all, last night on the mountain, Shunzi told him we'd been planning to keep him calm and then run away together. I read the mockery in Heejung's eyes perfectly. If I didn't grab onto this man right now, today would really end with me holding divorce papers. I threw off the black jacket draped over my shoulders, forced my jelly legs to hold me upright, and stood. Su Ziqing, what the hell are you barking about this early in the morning? My hoarse shout hit the quiet clinic like a thunderclap.
Su Ziqing froze.
This wasn't in his script. I was supposed to cry and throw myself at him begging for rescue. Mimi, did he beat you senseless? Don't be scared, I'm here. You're here for nothing. I shoved Heejung's arm aside and stumbled right up to Su Ziqing's face. I jabbed my finger at the tip of his nose.
Who got beaten?
I have a fever of almost 40 degrees. My husband loves me so much he carried me here on his back without even letting my feet touch the ground. What gives you, some random outsider, the right to stand here playing fake hero? Su Ziqing staggered back from my rapid-fire attack, his spine hitting the doorframe. Mimi, last night you said. What about last night? I cut him off without mercy. Last night, I went to see you for one reason, to get back every cent and every coupon I ever wasted on you. And what did you do? Dug through your pockets for ages and coughed up a pathetic 7 yuan 50 in crumpled bills. Even beggars get treated better than that. The room went dead silent. Old Dr. Lee's herb slipped from his hand and hit the table. His mouth fell wide open. Su Ziqing's face turned purple, then white, then purple again.
Zhang Mi.
What lies are you spreading? That was revolutionary comradeship, mutual aid between fellow citizens. He was hopping with panic, terrified Old Lee would spread this to the whole village. His precious educated youth reputation would be in the dirt. Behind me, Heejung had also gone still. Last night? Going to get money back? Shunzi told him I was planning to take the money and run away together with this man. Hezheng's fist clenched tight at his side, dark eyes churning with complicated emotions. I didn't care what either man was thinking right now. This scumbag was trying to ruin me, and I was done playing games. Today I was ripping his mask off for everyone to see. I gave him a cold smile and looked him up and down. Mutual aid? What did you ever do for me? Help me by eating all my family's white flour? Help me by wearing clothes bought with my husband's sweat money? I pointed straight at the white shirt on his body, my voice sharp as a blade. That polyester shirt you're wearing, my husband earned that 10 yuan doing odd jobs in the sun and wind for half a month. You're a grown man with 2 good hands and 2 good legs, and all you do is mooch. You eat my husband's food. You wear my husband's money. Don't you have any shame at all? Oldly chimed in from behind the counter. My. Comrade Su, so all that fancy dressing of yours was funded by he number 3's wallet. Su Ziqing looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. He clutched his chest, shaking with rage. Jiangmi, you're completely unreasonable. I came here out of concern, and you throw mud at me. Mud? I laughed coldly. Fine then, if you've got any backbone, take that shirt off right now and give it back. And that Shanghai brand watch too. Hand it over. Pay back what you owe, and we go our separate ways. You take your road, and I'll live happily with my husband. Take the shirt off? In autumn? With nothing underneath but a ragged undershirt? He'd be a laughingstock. Backed into a corner with nowhere to hide, Su Ziqing dropped the nice guy act completely. He shot me a vicious glare, then nervously glanced at Hezheng. You two are nothing but troublemakers. I won't stoop to your level. He spat out that pathetic exit line, shoved the curtain aside, and ran out of the clinic like a pack of wild dogs was chasing him. The room went quiet again. The moment my tirade ended, every drop of borrowed strength evaporated. My legs gave out, and I started falling straight toward the floor. Hezheng's arm shot out and caught me around the waist. I collapsed against his chest, gasping for air. I tilted my head up and gave him the most winning smile I could manage through my fever. See, hubby? I wasn't lying. I really went to collect a debt last night. I wouldn't look twice at that skinny rat. Hezheng looked down at my flushed, burning face. His head was still full of what Shunzi had reported on the mountain, now clashing with the scene of me just ripping into Su Ziqing's face, without mercy. I leaned against his broad chest, red-faced and hopeful, sure that my loyalty performance had earned at least a little tenderness. All I got was a quiet, cold snort from above. Hezheng's eyes swept over my face. Then his big hand gripped my shoulder and pushed me upright, away from his chest.
No worms. No hesitation.
This woman was too good at acting. Last night on the mountain, Shunzi had repeated it word for word. She and the pretty boy were plotting to pool money and disappear together. Today she flips around and tears the guy apart in public, acting like a devoted wife who wants to settle down. One face for private, another for public, without even rehearsing. Did she really think he was some fool blinded by a pretty face? Stand up straight. His voice was flat and heavy. He let go of my waist. Stop leaning on me. My support vanished, and I nearly toppled again. I grabbed the edge of the wooden bench with white knuckles and barely stayed upright, cursing inside my head. How is this man so impossible to crack? I just screamed myself hoarse defending him, practically offered him my beating heart on a plate, and he was still treating me like a suspected criminal. This was going to be way harder than I thought, but I truly had no energy left to figure out my next move. My head felt like a broken bellows, every joint ached down to the bone, and even breathing took effort.
Fine.
Survival first. I couldn't let myself die before I'd locked down this marriage. What a joke that would be. No divorce, no husband secured, and I'm the one who ends up dead. Damn it. Was my life worth nothing? I gritted my teeth, stuffed the paper packets of medicine into my pocket, and turned to look at the man standing there like a war god. I can't walk. I gave up all pretense and stuck both arms out. Carry me. My tone was completely matter-of-fact. Not a trace of the weak, pitiful act from before. Hezheng's brow furrowed. He stared at me for 2 seconds. Without a word, He turned around and crouched down slightly. I climbed on without an ounce of shame, arms looping around his neck with practiced ease. Old Lee had gotten his fill of entertainment. He clacked his abacus behind the counter and called out without looking up, "Drink plenty of hot water when you get home. Sweat it out under the covers. If the fever's not gone by tomorrow, go to the hospital in town. Don't waste time coming back here." Heejung grunted in acknowledgement and carried me out of the clinic. The autumn sun was already high when Heejung carried me home. He set me down on the hard Kong with a thud, not gentle, but not rough enough to hurt. My whole body ached from the fever. The second I touched the bed, I curled into a ball and yanked the old cotton blanket over myself until I was completely buried. I reached out blindly for his shirt, but grabbed nothing but air. He stepped back, looking down at the lump I made under the covers. My face was burning red, hair stuck to my cheeks with sweat, lips cracked and peeling. I looked pathetic, nothing like the woman who'd been screaming insults in the street an hour ago. "Stay put," for words, and he was out the door. I could hear him moving around in the yard. He went to the kitchen, washed some rough rice, lit the stove. Even while doing all this, he was probably cursing himself for being soft. Just that morning he'd heard from Shunzi that I was planning to steal money and run off with another man. Then he'd gone and defended me under the locust tree, practically chased Su Ziqing out of the clinic. Which of my words were real? He had no idea. But fever first. If I actually died in his house, that would be a hassle too. Once the fever broke, he'd drag me to the brigade office tomorrow morning and get those papers signed. That was probably what he was thinking while he stirred that pot of porridge. Inside the room, I felt like I was being roasted alive. My dreams were all wild dogs chasing me, biting at my heels. Then the smell of rice porridge drifted in. My stomach growled so loud it woke me up. I propped myself up on shaky arms. I was covered in sweat, but my head didn't feel quite as heavy. The fever had come down a little. On the small table by the Kong sat a chipped bowl filled with thick, creamy rough rice porridge with tiny dots of oil floating on top. Next to it were the paper packets of medicine from Old Lee and a full cup of water cooled to just the right temperature. Heejung was nowhere to be seen. That stubborn man. His mouth was hard as granite, but he'd cooked the porridge, brought it to my bedside, and even cooled the drinking water for me. There was still hope with this man. I grabbed the bowl and started shoveling porridge into my mouth. The rough rice scratched my throat a little, but it was cooked down perfectly and warmed my stomach all the way through. I cleaned the bowl, swallowed the medicine with the warm water, and winced at the bitterness. I needed to find some sugar somewhere. I'd just set the empty bowl down when I heard someone outside. "Mimi?
Jangmi?
Are you in there?" A soft, slightly silly voice from the yard. My brain matched it instantly. Chu Yao, the village chief's daughter. The original Jiangmi had such a terrible reputation that every girl and young wife in the village either avoided her or secretly sabotaged her like Wang Xiaoyan. Only Chu Yao genuinely treated the original as a real friend. Chu Yao was a pretty girl with round eyes and a sweet face, but a childhood fever had damaged her brain. She was a little slow, and she stuttered when she talked. Because of that, none of the other girls her age wanted to spend time with her. The original Jiangmi had burned every bridge in this village. Chu Yao was the only one left. They'd bonded because both of them kept hanging around the educated youth dormitory. They became each other's only ally. While the original chased after Su Ziqing every day, Chu Yao ran after a male educated youth named Lu Qingzhou. Two peas in a pod, both desperately throwing themselves at men who didn't deserve it. I cleared my throat. "I'm in here, Yao Yao. Come in." The curtain lifted and a round-faced girl in a blue cotton top with two braids poked her head in. When she saw me leaning against the bedding on the Kong, her eyes lit up and she scurried to the bedside.
Me.
Are you better?" She stumbled over her words, face flushing with worry. While she spoke, she dug into her pocket and pulled out two still warm boiled eggs, pressing them into my hands. My dad boiled them this morning. I snuck two for you. Eat them." I held those warm eggs and felt something soften in my chest. In this era, eggs were precious. Every family saved them to trade for salt and matches. For Chu Yao to secretly bring me 2 meant she truly cared about me with her whole heart. I'm much better. The fever's going down. I pulled her to sit on the edge of the Kong, peeled 1 egg, broke it in half, and popped 1 piece into her mouth. 1 for each of us. Chu Yao chewed with her cheeks puffed out like a little squirrel. She looked me up and down with pure, innocent admiration. Mimi, you're so pretty. The girls in the village, they all say you're. She got stuck, searching for words. They say I'm shameless? A fox spirit. I finished for her. She waved her hands frantically.
No, no.
I think you're the prettiest. They're just jealous. The village women couldn't stop staring at my curves and talking trash behind my back. Only Chu Yao never joined in. In her eyes, I could do no wrong. I pinched her round cheek gently. This sweet, innocent girl. In the original book, her ending was heartbreaking. The book said her father eventually arranged for her to marry the son of a county meat processing factory manager. Everyone thought she'd have a good life, but the son turned out to be a two-faced hypocrite who kept multiple women on the side. Chu Yao wasn't sharp enough to fight back or even speak up. In the end, one of his mistresses showed up at her door pregnant, and the humiliation drove Chu Yao to drown herself in a well. My eyes went cold thinking about it. Now that I was here, there was no way I'd let this sweet girl walk into that trap. Yao Yao. I held her hand, completely serious. When it's time for you to get married someday, I get final approval. If anyone dares bully you, I'll tear them apart myself. Chu Yao didn't really understand the marriage talk. She just heard that I was going to protect her, and her face broke into a huge grin. Mimi is the best to me. We were chatting happily when heavy footsteps sounded in the yard. Then the door curtain was lifted by a large hand. Heejun ducked through the doorway, his huge frame blocking most of the light. The room went dim instantly. Chu Yao was still holding half an egg. She turned and met his dark, stony face, and nearly dropped it on the bed. Heejun was the village's resident scary man. Never smiled, and when he went hunting he'd chop a wild boar's head off without blinking. Chu Yao was already timid by nature, and one look at him tied her tongue in knots. Heejun. Brother 3. She shot to her feet, wiping her hands nervously on her blue top. I should go. Mimi. Rest well? Before I could say a word, she bolted out of the room like wolves were after her. The door curtain flapped wildly behind her. I leaned against the bedding and shot him an annoyed look. What's with his scary face? You're worse than a demon king. You frightened Yao Yao away. Heejun tossed the empty water ladle into a wooden basin and walked to the Kong with a cold expression. He scooped up the empty porridge bowl with one big hand. Stop getting cozy with her. He looked down at me. The village chief's got one daughter, and he treats her like gold. You causing trouble for yourself is one thing. Don't drag that simple girl into the fire pit with you. That got me fired up. What fire pit? I treat her like my own little sister. Heejun gave a cold snort. Little sister? You used to push her to run to the youth dormitory every day to bring that guy Lu fine grain and meat. That's looking out for her. I had nothing to say to that. The original Zhang Mi really had done exactly that. To have company on her trips to see Su Ziqing, she'd brainwashed Chu Yao into believing that Lu Qingzhou was a wonderful, educated man who'd definitely marry her if she was good enough to him. Between the two of them, they'd been feeding the entire youth dormitory. Guilty as charged. I sank deeper under the blanket until only my eyes poked out. That was before. My brain was waterlogged. I won't let her waste herself on anyone like that again. Heejun didn't believe a word of it. Sort out your own mess first before worrying about others. He turned and walked out. I pursed my lips, rolled over, and closed my eyes to rest. What I didn't see was what happened to Chu Yao after she left. She ran out of our yard, patting her chest and gasping. Heejun was truly terrifying. She was walking home along the village road when a gang of grubby kids ambushed her from behind a haystack near the threshing ground. The ringleader was a brat named Ergu, one the old lady's grandson from the West End. Ergu flung a handful of dried mud right at her. It smacked her clean blue top and left a big gray splotch. Shoo the dummy. Stuttering mouth. He made faces while the other kids joined in, throwing grass stems and dirt clumps at her. When you grow up, you'll marry a cripple. You chase that educated youth around all day, and he doesn't even want you." The little monsters doubled over laughing. Chu Yao hunched her shoulders and covered her head, backing away. The dirt clumps stung her arms, but she didn't fight back. She just stood there with red-rimmed eyes, stomping her feet. Stop throwing. I'm not dumb." The more she stuttered, the more fun they had. They threw even harder. "You are dumb. Your dad being village chief doesn't change anything." "Big old dummy." Urga picked up a bigger chunk, winding up to throw it at her legs. "Stop." A sharp, cold voice cut across the threshing ground. Urga's hand jerked, and the dirt fell from his grip. The kid spun around. A tall, thin man was walking toward them from the other end of the road, wearing a faded old mouse-style jacket, carrying a book with dog-eared pages. Lu Qingzhou, the known cold-faced scholar of the youth dormitory. He strode over with a face dark as a storm cloud. "It's broad daylight and you're not home helping your family's work? You're out here bullying people instead? If I catch you throwing things at anyone again, I'm going straight to the brigade office to tell your parents. I'll have work points docked from your families." The threat of lost work points was nuclear. In this village, work points meant survival. Urga gulped and took off running. "Let's go. Lu the educated youth is gonna snitch." In a flash, every single kid vanished. The threshing ground went quiet. Lu Qingzhou stopped about 2 steps from Chu Yao. His eyes traveled over her. Mud splattered all over her blue top, bits of dried grass stuck in her hair. She looked absolutely pitiful. His brow knotted tight. "They're throwing mud at you, and you don't know how to dodge." Chu Yao lowered her arms. The moment she recognized him, her round apricot eyes lit up like little lanterns. All the hurt evaporated, and her cheeks flushed pink. Lu Qingzhou. How come you're here?" He looked at her grinning like nothing had happened, and an inexplicable irritation rose in his chest. Was this girl really missing part of her brain? She'd just been pelted and mocked, and the second she saw him, she was beaming. "I'm asking you a question. Why did you just stand there and take it?" His tone sharpened. Chu Yao dropped her head and twisted the hem of her jacket between her fingers. I did try to dodge. They're faster than me." Lu Qingzhou took a deep breath and bit back his frustration. "If you can't dodge, fight back. Next time someone bullies you, hit back. They throw at you, pick up a rock, and throw it right back. The more you retreat, the more they think you're an easy target. Your father is the village chief. What are you afraid of?" Chu Yao looked up and gave him a big, silly smile. She brushed the dirt off her clothes and waved her hand like it was nothing. It's okay. They're just kids. They don't mean anything by it. Just playing around." Lu Qingzhou actually laughed, an angry, disbelieving laugh. No harm meant? Those little brats were calling her the ugliest names in the book, and she thought they were playing? Suit yourself. You want to be a target, be a target. Don't expect someone to walk by and rescue you every time. He was done reasoning with her. Trying to talk sense into this girl was like pouring water into sand. He gripped his book, turned on his heel, and walked briskly toward the youth dormitory. Lu Qingzhou. Chu Yao chased after him 2 steps. He didn't slow down. If anything, he walked faster. She stopped and watched his tall, thin figure grow smaller down the road, eyes full of pure, uncomplicated happiness. Lu Qingzhou had just saved her from those bullies.
He still cared about her.
She carefully pulled the uneaten half of the egg from her pocket, thinking she'd give it to him, but he was already too far away. She tucked the egg back in, hummed a tune that was completely off-key, and skipped home with a smile. I lay on the Kong staring at the dark ceiling beams, my brain racing through everything I remembered from the book. Chu Yao had run out of here faster than a rabbit. That silly girl, her whole heart belonged to that educated youth Lu Qingzhou. From the book, I knew Lu Qingzhou was proud, cold, and the most cultured person at the youth dormitory. He wasn't sleazy like Su Ziqing. He didn't chase women for money and food. He mostly ignored Chu Yao's advances and rarely accepted what she brought him. He'd rejected her firmly several times, but the girl either couldn't take a hint or refused to. Later, when the college entrance exams reopened, Lu Qingzhou passed, went back to the city, and never looked back. Chu Yao was so heartbroken she stopped eating and smiling. Her father couldn't stand watching her suffer, so he pulled some strings and married her off to the son of a county meat processing factory manager. What everyone thought was a good match. It was a death trap.
Rolled over, Freining.
Chu Yao was the only person in this village who'd been genuinely good to the original Jiangmi. Now that I was here, I had to find a way to keep her away from Lu Qingzhou before she fell in any deeper. Better a short pain now than a lifetime of suffering. My nose twitched. A sour, stale smell hit me hard. Yesterday's river water with its weedy stink, plus a whole night of fever sweating under the blanket. The combination was unbearable. I sniffed my own sleeve and gagged. I smelled like a fermenting pickle barrel. I had to change. I pushed myself up from the Kong on wobbly legs. The fever was mostly gone, but my body was still weak. I shuffled to the old wardrobe, opened it, and dug through the pitiful selection until I found a white short-sleeved blouse with blue flowers, polyester, a little looser than the floral one, smooth fabric that would feel nice against my skin.
I paired it with some black pants.
I laid the clothes on the Kong, grabbed a dry towel, and wiped the sweat off my body. The door bolt wasn't latched. In the countryside, nobody bothered locking up during the day. You just hung a curtain. I didn't think twice about it and started unbuttoning. That tight floral blouse was stuck to me with sweat. I wrestled it off and let it drop to the floor. I was standing there in nothing but the red belly band. Thin red strings tied around my neck, bare skin everywhere else, smooth back, narrow waist, not an ounce of extra flesh. I was facing away from the door, reaching for the clean blouse on the Kong. Footsteps in the yard. I assumed Hezheng was just doing chores outside.
Creak.
The old wooden door groaned, and the curtain was shoved aside. Drink this bowl of medi. Hezheng walked in carrying a big ceramic bowl. His sentence died in his throat. The room was bright. My bare back was right there, completely exposed. That flash of red against snow-white skin. The dip of my spine, the impossibly small waist below it. He turned to stone. The bowl lurched in his hands. Dark brown medicine nearly sloshed over the rim. I heard him and turned around. I was still holding the blue and white blouse, half covering my chest with it. I blinked my fox eyes and met his gaze, which had gone terrifyingly dark and intense. The air froze solid. His Adam's apple jerked violently. His breathing turned rough and heavy. Whatever was left of his rational brain just combusted. 20-some years alive, and he'd never seen anything like this. The old Jiangmi wouldn't even let him see her ankle, and now this, the full show with no warning. You. His voice came out completely destroyed. One syllable was all he could manage. I didn't run. I actually took a small step toward him. Hubby, why didn't you knock before coming in? My voice was dripping honey and innocence. The blouse in my hand slipped just a little lower. The belly band was losing its battle with containment. Hezheng slammed his eyes shut and spun around. Put it on. He ground the words through clenched teeth, voice tight with barely controlled fire. His broad back was rigid as iron, and the blush had spread from his ears all the way down his neck. I was grinning so hard my cheeks hurt. This man looked like a fierce beast, but inside, he was pure as fresh snow. I took my sweet time pulling on the blouse, doing up each button one by one. I was just changing. I'm all sweaty and gross. It was driving me crazy. He stood there like a wooden post the entire time, back turned, veins popping on his hands, ears burning red, giving away everything he was trying to hide. Done. I fastened the last button and broke the silence. He turned around, eyes scanning me quickly to make sure everything was properly covered, then marched to the Kong and set the bowl of black medicine down hard on the little table. Drink it while it's hot, still hoarse, still strained. I picked up the bowl and sniffed, bitter enough to make my eyes water. I pinched my nose and chugged the whole thing in one go. The bitterness exploded in my mouth. My whole face scrunched up, and I stuck my tongue out, panting. Hezheng watched me suffer for a second, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of oil paper. He tossed it on the table. I opened it. Inside were 2 translucent orange candies. In this era, Fruit candies like these were luxury items at the supply store. You needed coupons and money, and most families wouldn't dream of buying them. Surprise flickered through me. When had this man bought me candy? I popped one into my mouth. The sweetness washed away the bitterness instantly. I sat there with the candy in my cheek, making a little bulge, and smiled up at him. "Hubby, you're so good to me." That hubby came out sugar-coated and feather-soft. His jaw clenched. He turned his face away. "Take the medicine and lie down. Sweat it out." He grabbed the empty bowl and headed for the door. "Wait." I grabbed his shirt before he could escape. He stopped and looked down at my hand. "Now what?" I pulled up my collar and sniffed it, scrunching my face in disgust. "I stink." Between yesterday's river water full of weeds and mud, the night of fever sweating under the blanket, and only a quick towel wipe, I was revolting. I looked up at him with my best puppy eyes. "Hubby, I want to take a bath. Can you heat some water for me?" His brow twisted into a tight knot. "A bath? You nearly fried your brain with that fever, and now you want to splash around in water? Are you trying to die faster?" I tugged on his shirt and shook it like a little kid. "But I really do smell terrible. It's all sticky and gross." "Here, smell." I leaned forward and pushed my collar toward his face. He jerked back like I was radioactive. The truth was, I didn't actually smell bad. The faint feminine scent mixed with a hint of sweat was apparently doing something far worse to him than any stink could, especially combined with the mental image of that red belly band and my bare back from earlier.
His throat was bone dry. "No."
"Wait until tomorrow when you're fully better." No room for discussion. I pouted, let go of his shirt, and flopped back onto the Kong. I rolled over with my back to him.
"Fine."
"Then I'll go draw cold water from the well and wash myself outside. If I die from it, perfect. Saves you the trouble of dragging me to the brigade office for divorce papers tomorrow." He stood there, chest heaving, teeth grinding. This woman was born to torment him. Go to the well. In her condition, she'd collapse headfirst into it before getting a single bucket up. Dead silence in the room. I strained my ears, listening. After a long pause, heavy breathing, then footsteps, marching out the door. The curtain fell shut. I rolled over on the Kong with a triumphant little smile. Got him. In the kitchen, I could hear the furious sounds of him splitting wood. Bang, bang, each swing loaded with frustrated energy. He stuffed the firewood into the stove and lit it. Before long, water was bubbling in the pot. He went to the backyard and dragged out the huge wooden tub, the one they normally used for scalding pigs during New Year's slaughter. It was big enough to fit 2 grown adults. He scrubbed it inside and out 3 times with a brush until it was spotless, then carried it one-handed into the bedroom. Thud. The tub landed in the middle of the dirt floor. I sat on the edge of the Kong, legs swinging, watching this big man haul buckets in and out. Steaming hot water poured into the tub, white mist filling the room and making everything warm and cozy. Then 2 buckets of cold water to balance it out. He stuck his hand in and stirred to check the temperature. Good enough. He shook the water off his fingers. Wash fast. Don't soak. Get back under the covers the second you're done. I shuffled over in my cloth shoes and crouched by the tub. Instead of undressing, I dipped my fingers in the water and swirled them around. It's a little hot. I looked up at him through the rising steam. His Adam's apple bobbed. Hot is good.
It'll make you sweat.
You run cold. If the water cools down, you'll get another fever. I stood up and deliberately slapped the water surface.
Splash.
A few warm droplets flew up and landed right on his shirt front, with one hitting the back of his calloused hand. Every muscle in his body went taut. His dark eyes locked on me. What are you doing? My arms and legs are so weak I have no strength at all. I blinked innocently. What if I slip and fall in the tub? Hubby, could you maybe? And oh, he cut me off before I could finish. A vein pulsed at his temple. He pointed at the door, barely restraining the urge to throw me into the water himself.
Wash yourself.
If you can't handle it, then don't wash. Stay stinky. He spun around, stormed out, and slammed the flimsy wooden door behind him. Outside, the autumn breeze carried a chill. He didn't go far. He sat down right on the stone step under the eaves, pulled out his tobacco pipe, pinched in some dried leaf, and struck a match. The ember glowed, and faded. Bitter smoke filled his lungs and barely kept the fire inside him under control. Through the thin wall, he could hear everything. The soft rustle of clothes being removed, fabric sliding, shoes dropping to the floor. Then the quiet splash of feet stepping into water. The washing sound started. His hand froze mid-puff. Every splash in that quiet little yard was like a hammer tapping directly on his heart. His brain started painting pictures he couldn't stop. That blinding white skin, that waist he could wrap one hand around, that red belly band soaked through with water. He choked on his smoke and coughed violently. He raked his fingers through his hair and knocked the pipe against the stone step in frustration. This was impossible. He couldn't live like this. The water sound stopped. He'd smoked the pipe all the way down, the ember nearly burning his rough fingertips. He knocked the bowl clean against his boot and stood up. The cool wind cleared some of the heat from his head, but clarity only made things worse. Something wasn't right. Something was very, very wrong. He stared through the window paper at the faint glow inside, eyes narrowed. The old Jiangmi used to wrap herself up like a dumpling even in summer. She wouldn't let him see so much as an ankle. If he got too close, she'd scream in his face about his dirt farmer stink for half an hour. But these last 2 days? First she was throwing herself into his arms after the river. Then she dug out the tightest blouse she owned and posed on the Kong with her collar wide open. And today, stripping down right in front of him, red belly band and all. This wasn't some personality change from almost drowning. This was aimed straight at him. Shunzi's words from last night flashed through his mind. Shunzi's words echoed in his head. Pool money. Run away together. Take this back to keep him calm. He Zheng's face went pitch black. So that was it. When forcing a divorce head-on didn't work, I'd switched to a softer weapon. The honey trap. He'd figured it out or thought he had. I was using my body to lure him in, make him drop his guard, then clean out whatever money was left in the house and hand it all to Su Ziqing as travel funds. His fists cracked. He'd almost fallen for it. He Zheng, my sweet voice floated from inside. I'm done washing. Can you come pour out the water? It's too heavy for me. He shoved through the curtain with a stone-cold face. The room was steamy and smelled faintly of soap. I'd changed into the white and blue blouse, hair half-dry over my shoulders. The hot bath had brought color back to my cheeks, pink and dewy, impossibly pretty. I was sitting on the Kong drying my hair with a towel. When I saw him, I held it out naturally. Hubby, can you help dry my hair? My arms are sore. He didn't take the towel. He walked to the wooden tub, gripped the rim with one hand, and lifted the entire thing like it weighed nothing, turned, and walked out without giving me a single glance. My hand froze in midair. What now? 5 minutes ago, he'd been blushing and fleeing. 1 cigarette later, and his face was black as a burned pot. Water splashed outside as he dumped the tub. He came back, but instead of approaching the Kong, he stopped 2 steps away and stared down at me. Done performing yet? I paused mid-towel rub. Performing what? I blinked, all innocence. He gave a cold laugh. Jiangmi, if you put this much brain power into useful things, you wouldn't have been played by that pretty boy for so long. He stepped closer, looming over me. You used to cover yourself head to toe. These past 2 days you're suddenly wearing skin-tight clothes and calling me hubby every other breath. What, forcing a divorce didn't work, so you switched tactics? My heart skipped. This man was sharper than I'd given him credit for. What tactics? I asked. The honey trap. He said it flat and cold. His eyes traced over my blouse with open mockery. You're planning to butter me up, wait until my guard drops, then sweep up every last cent in this house and hand it to Su Ziqing for his getaway money. Jiangmi, do you think I'm blind or just stupid? I almost laughed. This man's imagination was something else. But considering the original owner's track record, his suspicion was totally fair. I didn't get angry. I stood up, walked barefoot across the dirt floor, and stopped right in front of him. We were very close. He wanted to step back, but forced himself not to. I'd just had a hot bath. My cheeks were flushed, my skin was glowing, and the scent coming off me was clearly doing damage. His legs refused to move. I lifted both arms and draped them over his wide, solid shoulders. I rose on my tiptoes, fox eyes locked straight onto his dark gaze. So, is the honey trap working on you? My voice was soft as silk. My warm breath brushed across his rough jaw. His breathing stopped. His Adam's apple lurched. The blush crawled from his ears all the way down his neck. For one split second, his mind went completely blank. Then his willpower kicked back in. He grabbed my wrists and roughly pulled my hands off his shoulders. "Give it up." He shoved my hands away, voice raw and heavy. "No trick works on me." I stumbled from the force, but instead of backing off, I launched forward. I threw my arms around his narrow waist and pressed my entire body flush against his broad, burning hot chest. "I won't let go." I buried my face in his hard chest muscle, voice muffled and full of genuine hurt. "Hubby, I don't want a divorce. I really, truly don't. Can't we just live our lives together properly?" His hands hung frozen in the air, not daring to touch me. My boneless body was melting against him, heat bleeding through our thin clothes, flooding his veins. He clenched his jaw and let out a bitter laugh. "Don't want a divorce? You had plenty of backbone when you jumped in that river yesterday. Now what act is this?" He looked down at the top of my dark hair. Going to the broken mill to meet Susie Ching, was that also part of living properly together? My heart jolted. How did he know about the mill? My brain clicked instantly. This man had sent someone to spy on me last night. Fine, since he'd brought it up. Time to lay it all out. I went to see that rat to collect a debt. I tilted my face up, arms still locked tight around his waist. "He took your hard-earned money. He's wearing your shirt, eating your candy. Why should he get away with it for free?" He Zheng's ears were ringing. If this had been yesterday, he wouldn't have believed a single syllable. But this morning at the clinic, I'd torn Susie Ching to shreds in front of everyone, calling He Zheng, my man, over and over. Then again, the old Jiang Mi would have died for that pretty boy. Flipping this fast was suspicious. Who could trust it completely?
He scoffed.
Collecting a debt? You think Susie Ching is dumb enough to spit out meat he's already swallowed? I didn't let go. I rubbed my cheek against his firm chest and held on even tighter. If he won't pay up, I'll report him to the commune. I'll say he was having improper relations with a married woman, conning her out of money, and get him shipped off to a labor farm. My voice was loud and righteous, but it only made the fire in his chest burn hotter. Too fake. This drama queen would say anything to avoid those divorce papers. She'd make up lies as fast as she could breathe. He grabbed my wrists with real force, pried me off his body, and flung me back. I stumbled and landed on the edge of the Kong with a thump. "I don't believe you." He threw those 3 words at me and bolted out the door without looking back. What I didn't know was what was happening outside. He Zheng stormed out of the yard and onto the dirt road, couldn't even catch his breath. His head was a mess. The soap-clean scent of my skin and my warmth were wrapped around his brain like vines he couldn't shake off. He leaned against the old elm tree outside the wall, gulping air. It had been close. Too close. When I'd gone soft in his arms, red-eyed, whispering, "Hubby, I don't want a divorce," he'd been seconds away from complete surrender.
Slap.
He smacked himself across the face.
Hard.
"Get it together, He Zheng. This woman used to point at your nose and call you a dirt farmer, did you forget? She stole your hard-earned money to buy another man's shirts. Did you forget that too? Now she throws a few smiles and calls you hubby a couple times and you can't tell north from south? Pathetic. Tomorrow at dawn, no matter what she pulled, he was dragging her to get those divorce papers. Get far away from her. Out of sight. Out of mind. Back inside, I sat on the Kong swinging my legs, listening to his heavy footsteps fade away. His guard was up high, but honestly, I couldn't blame him. The things the original Jiang Mi had done would break any man's trust. Water wears through stone. I refuse to believe this man is made of iron. I slapped my knees and stood up. My stomach was growling furiously. Between yesterday's river, the fever, and everything since, all I'd eaten was half a bowl of rough rice porridge. This body was already weak. If I didn't eat soon, I'd pass out. I shuffled to the kitchen and pushed open the door. The phrase "bare walls" was invented for this room. A chipped water jar in the corner, a rice bin next to it. I lifted the lid, a thin layer of rough rice at the bottom. Even a mouse would cry walking out of there. What kind of life is this? I sighed and kept searching. A broken bamboo basket on the wall held a few shriveled, sprouting potatoes. 2 rough ceramic jars on the counter, one with salt that had hardened into clumps, the other an oil jar scraped so clean a dog couldn't have done better. Just a thin film of lard at the bottom. Not even half a green onion to be found. I remember the original had forced Heejing to trade for a pound of brown sugar and 2 pounds of fine flour on the black market just a month ago. Where was it all? 1 second of thinking, and I was grinding my teeth. Every last bit had gone into Sue's Heejing's stomach. Good brown sugar that should have gone to her own hard-working husband, poured down the throat of that useless parasite instead. Everything you ate of mine, I'm making you spit back double. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. I washed the potatoes, grabbed the sharp kitchen knife, and cut them into even, thin strips. I scraped out the last bit of rough rice flour from the bin, mixed it with water into a batter, tossed in the potato shreds, and added a pinch of coarse salt. Now came the hard part, lighting the stove. I'd seen these old clay stoves on TV, but actually using one was a first. I squatted in front of the fire pit, stuffed in some dry grass, and struck a match. A tiny flame appeared. Before it could grow, I panicked and shoved a thick log right on top. The flame died instantly, and a wall of choking black smoke exploded in my face. I stumbled backward, coughing, tears streaming. I nearly smoked myself into jerky. Stubborn, I tried again, this time propping the wood up to leave air underneath, using bits of grass to coax the fire. Heejung had been leaning against the wall outside, letting the autumn wind cool his brain. The cold air finally pushed those images of me out of his head. He dusted off his clothes and walked back through the gate, planning to turn over the vegetable patch. After tomorrow's divorce, the house would be peaceful. The second he stepped into the yard, a vicious burnt smell hit his nose. He looked up. Thick black smoke was pouring through the kitchen's half-open door, hazing out half the yard.
Fire.
His expression changed instantly. He crossed the yard in 3 huge strides and kicked the kitchen door wide open. Smoke hit him like a wall. He held his breath and scanned the dim room. A dark, soot-covered figure was crouching by the stove. I was hunched over, coughing into my hands. When the door crashed open, I turned to look at him. The woman who'd been glowing and freshly bathed 20 minutes ago now had 3 or 4 black smears across her cheeks. A big blob of ash sat on the tip of my nose, and the white and blue blouse was streaked with gray stains. I looked absolutely ridiculous. The panic drained from his face, replaced immediately by anger. He marched over, grabbed the back of my collar with one hand, and hauled me out into the fresh air of the yard like a kitten. "What are you doing in there?" His voice was deep and his chest was heaving. I gulped down several breaths of clean air and finally stopped feeling like I was going to cough up a lung. I rubbed my stinging eyes with the back of my hand, which only spread the soot more evenly across my face. I was hungry. I wanted to cook. I looked up at him with my best pitiful pout. My fox eyes were watery from the smoke, lashes still dotted with tears. Maximum pathetic effect. He stared at me. 1 minute I was playing seductress in the bedroom, the next I looked like a chimney sweep. What game was this woman running now? Honey trap didn't work, so she switched to the suffering martyr routine? He let go of my collar in disgust. "What's even left in there for you to ruin?" He tossed that over his shoulder and went back into the kitchen. He crouched at the stove and poked around with the fire tongs. I'd packed the logs in so tight there wasn't a crack of air between them. Everything was smoldering and smoking with nowhere for the fire to breathe. He pulled out the thick logs, cleared the ash, laid down dry grass and thin kindling. 1 match strike and the grass caught, crackling. He stacked the wood properly on top, and the fire roared to life in seconds. Flames lit up the dim kitchen and chased away the smoke. He grabbed the water ladle to wipe down the ash-covered counter, and his eyes happened to land on the cutting board. A rough ceramic bowl of yellowish batter sat on the counter, and next to it, perfectly cut potato shreds, every strand even and uniform. Heejang's hand froze in midair. He stared at those potato shreds like he'd never seen a vegetable before. He turned and found me peeking around the doorframe. "Go wash your face at the well. Then go back to bed." He tossed the rag on the counter. I'll handle it. No way. I marched in and snatched the bowl of potato batter right out from under him. Let me do it. I hugged the bowl to my chest, beaming my most charming smile. I can cook, I just can't work that stupid stove. You handle the fire, I'll handle the rest. That hubby slipped out sugar sweet again. He didn't want to argue, so he pulled up a low wooden stool, sat down by the stove, and fed some kindling into the fire pit. I got to work. The oil jar had nothing left but a thin smear of lard at the bottom. I carefully scraped it out with the wooden spatula and spread it across the heated iron wok. A soft sizzle. The oil was ready. I poured the potato and flour batter into the wok and quickly spread it into a round, thin pancake with smooth, practiced flips of the spatula. Heejung sat there holding the fire tongs, but his eyes weren't on the flames. They were on me. These movements were way too skilled. When had this woman learned to cook like this? And that knife work on the potatoes? Everything about me, since yesterday, was wrong. He could feel it. Did falling in the river somehow swap out her entire brain? The smell started filling the kitchen. No scallions, no garlic, no ginger, just potato and rough rice flour with a hint of salt and leftover pork fat. But in an era where oil and grain were precious, that simple mix of carbs and grease smelled heavenly. I judged the timing, flicked my wrist, and the whole pancake flipped in the air, landing perfectly back in the wok. The edges were golden and crispy. Heejung's breathing went quiet. This was good enough for the state-run restaurant in town. All this time, she hadn't lacked the skill. She'd just never bothered cooking for him. Every good ingredient had been boiled tasteless and carried off to feed the pretty boy. Turn the fire down a little. Don't let it burn, I said without looking up. His grip tightened on the tongs. He pushed the firewood apart to lower the heat. The pancake came out of the wok onto a big plate, golden, steaming, gorgeous. My stomach had been screaming for ages. I tore off a piece with my bare hands, blew on it twice, and popped it in my mouth. Crispy outside, soft inside, salty and savory. Perfect. I turned to look at the man sitting on his stool. His knuckles were white around the fire tongs, jaw clenched, clearly fighting something. I carried the plate over and held it out.
Here.
Try your wife's cooking. I pinched a piece of the still hot pancake and lifted it right to his lips. We were close enough that my soap-clean scent mixed with the greasy potato smell created something strangely intimate. He leaned his head back, dodging the food. Not hungry. Eat it yourself. My hand stayed in the air. I blinked and leaned in closer. Are you grossed out by my dirty hands? My face was still covered in soot, though my hands were actually clean. He turned away. We stayed locked like that. He kept leaning back until his broad back hit the mud wall, nowhere left to retreat. The smell of crispy, oily potato pancake drilled straight into his nose. His stomach let out a quiet growl. A traitor. He clamped his jaw shut and refused to open his mouth. I was relentless. I pushed the golden, crispy edge right against his closed lips. Warm oil smeared across his dry, slightly cracked mouth. Are you going to eat or not? If you don't open up, I'm shoving it up your nose. A vein jumped at his temple. He had zero doubt I'd actually do it. We were so close. My scent and the kitchen smoke swirled together, boring into his defenses. He held his breath, cornered, and finally opened his mouth. I stuffed the piece in before he could change his mind. My fingertips accidentally grazed his warm, rough lips. A split-second touch. Gone in an instant. Every muscle in his body went rigid. He stopped chewing entirely. Come on, chew. What are you freezing up for? I pulled my hand back and grinned at him. His Adam's apple bobbed and he forced himself to start chewing. The moment the flavors hit his tongue, his taste buds surrendered completely. The clean sweetness of potato, the faint meatiness from the leftover pork fat, the rough rice flour crisped to perfection on the outside, all woven together flawlessly. Crispy, tender, perfectly salted. In a time when most people could barely eat a full meal, this was a masterpiece. He'd never tasted anything this good in his entire life. His stomach screamed for more. He chewed twice and swallowed the rest of the piece whole. I raised the plate higher, eyes sparkling with hope. Good, he looked down at my bright, eager fox eyes. He wanted to say it was terrible, wanted to crush my smugness. But that lie got stuck in his throat. Looking into those shining eyes, he just couldn't force it out. One tiny grunt from his nose, so low you'd miss it if you weren't listening. But I heard it. My whole face broke into a crescent moon smile, 2 little white teeth showing. If it's good, eat more. There's plenty on the plate. I grabbed another piece and pushed it toward him, chattering happily. I can make all kinds of things, different pancakes, hand-pulled noodles, dumpling soup. Just bring me the ingredients, and I'll cook for you every single day. Every single day. Those words landed in his ears but stirred nothing warm. He scoffed silently to himself. The future? What future? It wasn't like the house had never had fine flour or good meat before. Every time he brought something home, the old Jongmi would guard it like he was a thief. The second he left for the fields, she'd cook everything up, pack it into a metal lunchbox, and trot it over to the youth dormitory for Su Ziqing. He'd come home exhausted after a full day's work and couldn't even get a cup of warm dishwater. Now that divorce papers were practically in hand, she suddenly wanted to play the loving wife and show off her cooking. This pancake could be the most delicious thing on earth. It still had scheming baked right into the center. Heejun pushed away the second piece of pancake. No need. His voice was cold steel. Tomorrow morning we go to the brigade office. After that, you can cook for whoever you want. Stop putting on a show for me, like a bucket of ice water dumped over my head. My hand hung in the air, holding the pancake. This man, why couldn't he just get it? His guard was up like a porcupine. Give him one kind word, and he'd stab you with his spines.
Fine. Don't eat then.
Starve to death for all I care. I stuffed that piece into my own mouth and chewed hard. I turned my back to him, stood at the counter, and angrily ate every last pancake on the plate by myself. After a whole day of barely eating, the food finally warmed my stomach and brought some strength back to my limbs. I burped, slammed the empty plate on the counter, and waited. Heejun said nothing. He walked over, scooped hot water, and started washing the wok and dishes. His movements were efficient but rough, carrying an irritation he couldn't quite name. When he finished, he filled a basin with warm water, set it on the counter, and tossed me a patched-up old towel. Wash your face. I blinked, then leaned over the water jar to see my reflection. 3 or 4 black streaks across my cheeks, a fat blob of ash on my nose, gray smudges on my forehead. I looked like a cat that had crawled out of a coal mine. I yelped, grabbed the towel, dipped it in the warm water, and scrubbed every last bit of soot off until my clean, fair face showed again. By the time I finished, it was completely dark. Village people turned in early to save kerosene, lights out the moment the sun set. Heejun had already cleaned the kitchen spotless and buried the fire under ash, leaving just a faint red glow at the bottom. I leaned against the doorframe watching him for a moment, then called out softly, "Heejun, what now?" He hung the water ladle on the wall without looking up. I touched my forehead, still a little warm, and made my voice as sweet as possible. "My fever's not completely gone. I'll be cold sleeping alone on the Kong tonight. Why don't you come sleep on the heated bed?" His hands paused for half a beat. He set the wooden basin in the corner, turned, and stared at me. "Jongmi, what scheme are you running now?" That choked me. "I'm inviting you to sleep on a warm bed." How is that a scheme? He grabbed his old jacket from the chair back and dug up old wounds. Who was it that said I smelled like dirt and banished me to the firewood shed? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Another one of the original's crimes, slapped right in my face. I bit my lip and walked over to grab a sleeve. That was before. I was immature. I've changed. Isn't that allowed? He looked down at my small white hand clutching his sleeve. His throat tightened, but his face only got colder. Changed? Yesterday you were planning to run away with Su Ziqing, and today you've changed. My temper flared, but one look at his guard dog expression, and I swallowed. I told you, I'm getting every cent back from Su Ziqing. That's your business. He slung the jacket over his shoulder and headed for the door. I'll sleep in the shed. Lock the bolt so you can't say I took advantage of you tomorrow. I watched his broad back disappear and hurled the towel into the basin. Heejun, keep being stubborn. You'll regret it sooner or later. He stopped at the door, back still turned. Regretting is still better than being fooled by you. The curtain dropped. Heavy footsteps faded outside. I stood there, cheeks puffed with frustration, glaring at the swaying cloth. This man was the toughest bone I'd ever tried to chew. But the tougher he was, the more determined I got. I climbed onto the Kong and pulled the blanket up. Rolling toward the direction of the firewood shed, I muttered under my breath. Says he doesn't care, but he still washed the pots and heated the water. Who are you fooling with that cold-face act? In the shed, Heejung sat against a stack of firewood, holding his unlit tobacco pipe, turning it over and over. My words, "Come sleep over here," kept drilling into his ears on repeat. He threw the pipe aside in frustration and pulled a tattered old cotton coat over himself. Can't trust her. This woman is the best liar alive. The next morning I woke up, and Heejung was already gone. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. Heejung, no answer. I threw on clothes and checked the yard. The shed door was open, one hoe was missing from the tool corner, and in the kitchen, a rough ceramic bowl sat upside down over the wok. I lifted it. Half a bowl of warm, rough rice porridge, with old Lee's medicine packet sitting beside it. I stared at that porridge, and my lips curved up before I could stop them. Says he doesn't care about me. I drank a couple spoonfuls. The flavor was bland enough to make you cry, but it spread warmth all through my stomach. I took the medicine, felt my forehead, the fever had dropped a lot, and my whole body finally felt alive again. Just a little weak. I couldn't sit inside anymore. I changed into the freshly washed floral blouse, braided my hair into a loose plait, and stepped out. The village was already buzzing with morning life. People heading to the fields with hoes, neighbors sipping porridge by their walls, the smell of sweet potato leaves frying somewhere mixing with the earthy air. I walked toward the big locust tree in the village center. Before I even got close, Lee Sumei's shrill voice hit my ears. If you ask me, he number 3 must have done something terrible in his past 8 lives to deserve such a restless wife. Widow Zhao jumped right in. No kidding. Yesterday, she's screaming in the street that she's his woman for life. Who knows if she snuck off to see that educated youth again last night? The women around them were shaking with laughter. With that face of hers, she's built for trouble. One look, and any man loses his soul. No way Heejung can keep hold of her. Can't hold her? That's his own fault for marrying such a high-maintenance piece. I stopped walking. Every trace of my smile vanished. I'd just come out for some fresh air, and these people already had their tongues hung out to dry in the sun.
Fine.
I didn't mind helping them flip to the other side. I walked straight over and cleared my throat. Had enough to say, every head under the locust tree swiveled toward me. Widow Zhao rolled her eyes first. Oh look, the star of the show. We didn't mention any names. I smiled, walked right up to her, grabbed a handful of her sunflower seeds, and cracked one open nice and slow. Didn't mention names? Then why so nervous? Her face darkened. Jiangmi, don't think you can act wild just because Heejung stood up for you yesterday. I spat the shell into a dirt hole, voice crystal clear. My man protecting me just means we have a good marriage. You're a widow. Why are you losing sleep over it? Quiet laughter rippled through the onlookers. Widow Zhao's face turned purple. Who are you calling a widow? I tilted my head. Is there a second Widow Zhao in this village? Lee Sumei jumped in to rescue her friend. Jiangmi, don't go too far. Everyone's just feeling sorry for Heejung, a strong worker who breaks his back every day feeding you, while you're still chasing after that pretty boy at the youth dormitory. I turned and looked at the shoe sole in her hand. Sorry for him. I stepped closer, smiling sweetly but with a knife behind every word. Then why don't you marry your daughter off to him? Oh wait, I almost forgot. Your daughter tried giving him handmade insoles last year, and he sent her and her basket right back home. Lee Sumei flinched. The needle jabbed into her finger, and she hissed in pain. The women nearby were biting their cheeks, trying not to laugh. That's a lie. Lee Sumei's voice went shrill. My daughter is a decent girl. Who'd want that dirt farmer? My smile dropped completely. I reached over, plucked the unfinished shoe sole from her hand, and flipped it over. On the inside, someone had embroidered a crooked character, Zheng. Decent. I held the sole up high for everyone to see. Is this character for your pig? The crowd erupted. Would you look at that? It really does say Zheng. I knew her daughter kept sneaking down to the village and Li Sume lunged to grab it. Give that back, I pulled it away. What's the rush? I thought nobody wanted the dirt farmer. Widow Zhao tried to back up her friend with a snide remark. Even if Sume's girl embroidered a shoe sole, at least it's better than you running around with Su Ziqing. That was exactly what I'd been waiting for. I shoved the sole back into Li Sume's arms, turned to face Widow Zhao, and locked eyes. Which eye of yours saw me running around with Su Ziqing? She puffed out her neck. The whole village knows. The whole village, meaning who specifically? I stepped in close, voice steady and unhurried. Name them.
Right now.
Call them out in front of the brigade chief. Tell me who saw it, where they saw it, and when. Go ahead. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. She couldn't produce a single concrete answer. I gave a cold laugh. Can't say? Then it's slander. I pointed toward the brigade office. Let's go.
Right now.
We'll ask the brigade chief whether interfering with a military marriage deserves punishment. Widow Zhao froze. Military marriage. I raised one eyebrow. He Zheng won an advanced commendation in the militia company. His file at the brigade still has a red flower pinned on it. You didn't know? This was half true at best, but it was more than enough to scare a bunch of village gossips. The blood drained from Widow Zhao's face. Li Sume went quiet too. I brushed the seed dust off my hands and raised my voice a notch. From now on, anyone who runs their mouth about my husband, I'll park myself on your doorstep every single day and air out all your dirty laundry for the whole village to hear. My gaze swept across them and landed back on Widow Zhao. Especially you. How many times have you delivered shoe soles to Juan the carpenter in West Ditch in the middle of the night? Want me to count them for you? Widow Zhao's knees nearly gave out. Sharp gasps hissed through the crowd. I didn't look back. I turned and walked away. Passing Li Sume's house, I heard muffled scolding through the walls. You stupid girl, who told you to embroider a name on shoe soles? You trying to make your mother die of shame? A teary young voice protested. I didn't even give them to him. Yesterday, you were the one saying He Zhang was better than all the lazy men in the village. I stopped and couldn't hold back a laugh. My mood lifted even more. Even the post-fever weakness faded a little. Back at the He family gate, I poked my head inside. The firewood shed was empty, the kitchen door half closed. No sign of He Zheng anywhere. Still not home. I touched the lukewarm water in the kitchen pot and muttered to myself, perfect. When he gets back, I'll show him what I can really do. The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. That rule works in any era. I rolled up my sleeves and headed to the little garden in the back. It wasn't big, fenced with crooked wooden sticks, dried corn leaves jammed in the gaps. But the rows were tidy. Tomato vines propped up with bamboo stakes, green peppers hanging from their stems, and a small wilted patch of baby bok choy. I crouched at the edge and tapped a ripe red tomato with my fingertip. My eyes lit up. This beats any 15-yuan salad bowl from the building downstairs. I picked one, wiped it on my shirt, and held it to my nose. Sweet, tangy. The smell went straight to my brain. Back in my old life, I'd been chased by clients demanding design revisions every day. I couldn't even keep a potted plant alive. Now I'd woken up to a whole vegetable garden. Sure, we were dirt poor, but the ground grew things, the stove made heat, and I could still breathe. This life at least had something to look forward to. I picked 3 red tomatoes and 2 green peppers. As I was about to stand, a small head popped up over the neighbor's fence. A snotty-nosed kid, staring at the tomatoes in my hand and swallowing hard. I raised an eyebrow. What are you looking at? The kid turned to run. Come back, I called, smiling. He stopped, half hiding behind the fence, stammering. I didn't steal anything. Did I say you did? I picked a smaller tomato from my basket and held it out over the fence. Here. Take it. His eyes went huge. For me, if you don't want it, I'm taking it back. I want it, I want it, I want it. He snatched it, bit in, and his whole face scrunched from the sourness. But he didn't spit it out. I laughed. Whose kid are you? I live next to Uncle Shunzi's house. My name's Gooden. My mouth twitched. Your parents really saved energy on naming you. Gun means dog egg. Gun hugged his tomato, then glanced toward the field path and whispered, Annie, don't go to the youth dormitory. My hand stopped. Who said I was going to the youth dormitory? He swallowed his bite. Wang Xiaoyan just passed through here. She said you picked vegetables, so you're definitely going to cook for Su Ziqing. She said when Hezhen gets back, she'll tell him to go to the dormitory and catch you there.